Chapter 257. Is a confession considered a boyfriend? Kong Xiaobo naturally wasn't the fatty's opponent, and stumbled from the impact. But that wasn't all. Coincidentally, the dirty water in the bucket spilled all over the fatty's pants. As if he'd just peed his pants. Do you have eyes? The fatty was enraged. He'd gone to the washroom to smoke a cigarette, only to be splashed with dirty water. It infuriated him. Do you want to die? This fatty was a little tyrant in the third year of high school. Of course, the little tyrant was only a little famous in the grade. Compared to the four big bullies in the school, he was simply not on the same level. However, it was very normal for the little tyrant to show off in front of ordinary students. And so, the fat little tyrant treated Kong Xiaobo as a target to vent his anger on. How can you blame me for this? At most, we're both in the wrong. Why didn't you keep an eye on it? Kong Xiaobo was a little angry. He wasn't an unreasonable person. He was just about to apologize when the fatty started scolding him. Keep an eye on it? You Dafa, haven't even kept an eye on who's passing by. Which class are you from? Don't you know me? The fat little tyrant glared at Kong Xiaobo. You Dafa. Kong Xiaobo paused. He took a closer look at the person in front of him. It really was you Dafa. But there was a trace of disdain in his heart. He looked at the bucket in his hand. There was still some dirty water left. Kong Xiaobo picked it up and poured it on Yudafa's head. You don't want to live anymore, do you? Yudafa was furious as he pointed at Kong Xiaobo. Hurry up and scram. My boss and sister-in-law are waiting for me to fetch water. I won't care if my boss comes over if you continue to dawdle. Kong Xiaobo pushed Yudafa's hand to the side. Your boss and sister-in-law? Yudafa was stunned. He was a little confused. It's right behind me. Kong Xiaobo pointed behind him. Yudafa looked in the direction Kong Xiaobo was pointing and saw Lin Yi and Tang Yun standing not too far away. His legs cramped and he almost fell to the ground. Brother, you said that brother Lin Yi is your boss? Yudafa's tone toward Kong Xiaobo suddenly became polite. Who didn't know Lin Yi? He was one of the big four young thugs in the new school. He was vaguely above the other two young thugs, and had become the leader of the new generation. How could he, Yudafa, afford to offend such a person? The first of the four big bullies had already graduated and became a legend. And the last one was a demon from the middle school department. After staying in the school for a few days, he had turned the school upside down. Although he had already transferred out, he was still listed as one of the legends of the four big bullies. Now there were only two of the big four left, but they were completely trampled by Lin Yi. Lin Yi had become the leader of the new generation of Big Four, and Yudafa, who was a little tyrant at his age, didn't dare to offend him. He knew that he wasn't a match for Pinliang and Zhou Ruoming, let alone Lin Yi. Of course I'm Kong Xiaobo, the only follower of my boss. Look closely, and be more observant next time. Kong Xiaobo put his hands on his waist, and said to Yudafa. Yes. Yudafa nodded quickly. Go get me a bucket of water. Kong Xiaobo handed the bucket to Yudafa. I'll go right now. Yudafa felt that it was an honor to be able to do something for Lin Yi. He could brag about it in the future. Lin Yi had asked him to do something before, so Lin Yi could be considered half his boss now. Yudafa brought the water back to Xiaobo, who was just about to take it when Yudafa spoke up. Bro, I can't let you do this. I'll bring it to the boss myself. Kong Xiaobo nodded and sighed. His status had risen along with Lin Yi. If it weren't for Lin Yi, would Yudafa give him so much face? In the past, it would be good enough if Yudafa didn't beat him up, let alone bring water. Yudafa brought the bucket to Lin Yi and Tang Yun. Boss, sis-in-law, the water is here. You are? Lin Yi looked at Yudafa suspiciously. He didn't know this person. Where did he come from? Boss, I'm Yudafa, the leader of the 12th grade. Of course, compared to Boss Lin Yi, I'm nothing. Yudafa introduced himself. Oh, Lin Yi nodded. All right, I got it. You can go now. Thank you. You're welcome, boss. If you need anything, you can find me anytime. I'm in the 30th grade. Yudafa said respectfully. Tang Yun didn't think that the evil Yudafa would show his loyalty to Lin Yi. She was confused. The most embarrassing thing was that he called her sis-in-law. Tang Yun still remembered the love letter Yudafa wrote to her. It was so disgusting and explicit. But in the blink of an eye, it became subservient. All of this was because of Lin Yi, the boy who transferred here less than a month ago. I'm going back. I need to clean the windows. Tang Yin picked up the bucket on the ground and said to Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo. Okay, go. Lin Yi nodded and went back to the classroom with Kong Xiaobo. Pin Liang obediently moved to Gao Xiaofu's side. It was a corner of the classroom, far away from Lin Yi. He was afraid that Lin Yi would turn him into a flying man. Yao Yao sis, I think Shield Bro is too handsome. Yushu pulled Ming Yao's arm. Look at Pin Liang. He moved away after being scared by him. You don't have to worry about being harassed anymore. Yeah, he's so handsome. Let him touch your boobs. Ming Yao pouted. Yao Yao sis, are you jealous? Why don't you let him touch you next time? Yushu said with a smile. I'm not an idiot. Ming Yao glared at Yushu. Is he my boyfriend? Why should I let him touch me? If you want to be touched, then go ahead. Oh, Shield Bro accepted my confession. He's my boyfriend now, right? Yushu mumbled to herself. It wasn't a loss for her to let him touch her boobs. Yes, that's it. Ming Yao was going crazy from Yushu. Was there something wrong with her friend's head? Was there anyone like her? It was Saturday morning, and Lin Yi was woken up by Yushu's slap. Shield Bro, wake up. We're going to the theme park today. Theme park. It was only then that Lin Yi remembered that he'd promised the miss and Shu to go bungee jumping. He got up in a daze, washed up, and put on a fresh set of clothes. He walked out of the room to find Ming Yao and Yushu ready. You drive Shu's Beetle and follow us. Shu and I will sit in my car. Ming Yao ordered after looking at Lin Yi. Chapter 258. Suspicion of an insider. Lin Yi drove quietly behind Ming Yao's Audi S5, glancing at the rearview mirror from time to time. Following them again? Sihua's men? A cold smile formed on Lin Yi's lips. It was the same car that tailed him last time. Did they really think he wouldn't be able to detect them with this kind of tracking technology? Sihua was quite the daring one, wasn't he? 2 of his men died last time. So who was he going to send this time? As a result, Lin Yi didn't get out of the car to ask. He pretended like he didn't know anything, as he followed behind Ming Yao. Lin Yi wouldn't mind giving them another car accident if the black SUV dared to make a move. Songshan's theme park was located in the southern district of Songshan. Built at the end of the 2000 years, it was one of the more famous theme parks in the province. Ming Yao parked the car in the park's underground parking lot, and Lin Yi parked at the side as well. He followed Ming Yao into the elevator when Lin Yi saw the black SUV, following them turn into the parking lot as well. What surprised Lin Yi was that the SUV didn't have a parking card, instead showing a small plastic ID to the toll booth at the entrance. Lin Yi found it odd. Did this SUV have something to do with the theme park? Yao Yao, where does this theme park belong to? Public or private? Lin Yi asked casually. Public and private? Why do you ask? Ming Yao didn't understand what Lin Yi was getting at. Public and private? Which company invested in it? Lin Yi didn't let go of the topic that easily. Shield Bro, it's Uncle Chu's business. Yushu blurted out. Oh. Lin Yi blinked. Could it be that someone from Pengzhan Industries was in the SUV? That was the only way to explain why there was no charge in the underground parking lot. The SUV wasn't a military vehicle, just a regular license plate. It wouldn't be free parking if it wasn't related to the theme park. Daddy's company invested in it, but it's always been managed by a subsidiary company. Ming Yao said. Then can we park here for free? Lin Yi asked. Ming Yao looked at Lin Yi as if he was an alien. She might be a miss, but calling Faubert just for a few kwai parking fee was too much trouble, wasn't it? Ah! Lin Yi smiled faintly. The people in the MPV behind him probably weren't lacking in money either. Who would be short on parking fees if they were able to wrestle with Pengzhan? However, being able to park for free was also a symbol of status and privilege. The people in the car probably thought so too. Lin Yi had guessed correctly. In the SUV, Zhang Yuzhou was all smiles as he looked at Mao Sheng. Jean Bro, you're amazing. You don't even need to pay for parking. This amusement park was originally invested and built by the company, and I happen to be in charge of it. Mao Sheng said nonchalantly as he put away his ID. Since I have this privilege, of course I'll use it. You're right, Yuzhou said with a laugh. But, since this is Jean Bro's territory, it'll be even easier. I was worried about not knowing where to start, but it's no problem now. I didn't think they'd come to the amusement park, Maoxing said with a cold smile on his lips. There's a few of my confidants here. We can ask them for help later. Confidants? Won't they spill the beans? Yuzhou was a little worried. After all, they were going to kill someone today. Spill. Let's give them some guts, Maoxing said disdainfully. They're the ones helping me get money. And the amount of money they've embezzled is a death sentence. Then it's fine. Yuzhou nodded. They were on the same boat now, so there was no need to worry about them betraying him. Find someone smart enough to follow the three of them and report their location. We'll see what we can do to create an accident, Maoxing said to Yuzhou. No problem, Yuzhou said to an inconspicuous young man in the car. Ma, you go. Yes, Yuzhou bro, the young man said as he got out of the car and quickly followed. A cold light flashed through Maoxing's eyes. He was the cautious type, and he didn't know much about this Ma youngster's background. He'd seen him today. Maoxing's first thought was to get rid of this Ma as soon as this was over. He couldn't let the guy cause him any trouble at all. The person behind Sihua had eyes and ears everywhere. But he wouldn't stand up for Master Bing if something were to happen. Master Bing was his bastard son. But his wife's family wasn't to be messed with, either. It'd be troublesome to raise an illegitimate child this big. Maoxing knew that, and so he always kept a backup plan in place. Yao Yao, are we going bungee jumping now? Yushu was looking forward to it. The amusement park was Pengzhan's property, but the two of them had only been here once when it was first building. The bungee jumping valley hadn't been built yet. Bungee jumping as soon as we got here? Meng Yao had been holding back for the past few days and wanted to vent her frustrations, but bungee jumping as soon as they got to the amusement park wasn't something she could handle. After all, bungee jumping was dangerous and exhausting, and Meng Yao wanted to explore the other parts of the park first. Let's explore then. Right, Yao Yao, why don't we go to the haunted house first? I heard that there's a new haunted house here. It's really scary, Yushu suggested. Haunted house? Meng Yao frowned. Why would Yushu want to go to such a childish place? Haunted house? Who was she trying to scare? It was all fake stuff. What was there to see? Yeah, it's really scary. I heard that a lot of young couples go there. And when their girlfriends get scared, they get to take advantage of them, Yushu said with a straight face. Shu, are you an idiot? Meng Yao was speechless. Then why don't you go with Lin Yi and let him take advantage of you? No, I'm not scared, but I think you'll be scared, Yao Yao, Yushu said. Me? Scared? Meng Yao was even more speechless. You think I'll be scared of kids' stuff? If that's the case, then let's go. Let's see who's scared. But Shu, I'm telling you, don't get upset when he takes advantage of you. Hee, Yao Yao, we don't know who gets taken advantage of yet, Yushu said with a smile. She'd secretly watched the recording of Pinliang's haunted house before, and naturally, she wasn't that scared. Chapter 259. Pretending to be a ghost. Ma, who'd been following Meng Yao and Yushu from afar, heard their conversation as well. Naturally, Lin Yi had noticed Ma coming, but didn't want to startle him. As far as he was concerned, Ma wasn't much of a threat at all. Might as well let him tag along and see what he was up to. Who knew? He might even be able to lure out the mastermind. He was just a small character, and Lin Yi killing him wouldn't affect the mastermind at all. The guy wasn't even a third of a golden class. He was just an errand boy. Yuchu bro, it sounds like they're going to the haunted house. Ma's mission was to report Meng Yao and the others' movements to Maoxing and Zhang Yuchu. Haunted house. I got it, Yuchu said. I'll discuss it with Jean bro. I'll tell you what to do. Maoxing had heard Ma's words through the walkie-talkie as well, but he hadn't figured out what kind of accident he could create in the haunted house yet. Assassinations were out of the question, and that would only draw the police in faster. That wasn't something he wanted to see. Get Ma to go to the ticket counter first. Tell them to slow down the sales. Don't let Meng Yao and the others go in immediately, Maoxing said after some thought. All right. Yuchu relayed Maoxing's message to Ma. Jean bro, what should we do now? What kind of accident do you think could kill people in a haunted house? Maoxing decided to discuss it with Yuchu. Um, Inside the haunted house, Yuchu couldn't think of any good ideas. There's nothing else in the haunted house other than scaring people. It's all fake stuff. Scaring people. Maoxing cackled all of a sudden. I got it, haha. Let's go pretend to be ghosts and scare them to death. What do you think? That's a good idea. The things in there are all dead. Although it's scary, it's nothing. But if we pretend to be ghosts and shout their names, they will probably. Yuchu nodded in agreement. Isn't there a saying that goes, don't you remember? It was so scary that it scared people to death. That's what it means. Let's go. Let's go get ready. Don't scare those two girls to death. Maoxing smiled darkly. He'd only been suggesting it casually, but Yuchu's approval had moved him. That's right. Scaring people to death. This is an old saying. It shouldn't be wrong. Why does this haunted house only let 3 or 4 people in at a time? Meng Yao looked at the entrance of the haunted house impatiently. There were still 3 or 4 groups of people waiting in front of her. Who knew how long it would take for them to get there? If he had known earlier, he would have asked Faubert to come and give him a heads up, saving him from having to wait for so long. Isn't it too late for a good show? Yushu, on the other hand, didn't mind. You know what, Yao Yao? The 2 couples who went in just now were pale with fright. You'll be like that too, Meng Yao said, annoyed. Why don't we stop playing and go watch something else? Let's wait a little longer. It'll be our turn in another 2 or 3 groups. Yushu didn't want to give up just like that. Yao Yao, think about it. It's scarier when there's only a few people in the haunted house. What's the point if there's too many visitors? If there's too many people and too few ghosts, then are the ghosts scaring the people, or the people scaring the ghosts? There's no point in that. That's true. Meng Yao was starting to agree with Yushu's reasoning. Indeed, if there were too many people, then there'd be no time for ghosts. In the control room at the back of the haunted house, Maoxing, Zhang Yuzhou, and Ma had all changed into their costumes. Maoxing was a vampire, Zhang Yuzhou was a zombie, and Ma was a faceless man with something stuck to his face. Get ready, call the people in front. They don't need to come in, just tell Meng Yao to come in directly. Yuchu said to Ma. Yes, Ma was already a faceless man, and his speech was a little sluggish. He took out his phone and dialed a number. You guys can go now. Outside the haunted house, the 2 groups of people waiting in front of Meng Yao's group suddenly spoke up after receiving a call. We're not waiting anymore, it's too slow. Let's go and play something else. Yeah, it's so slow. I don't want to watch anymore. Let's go. Another person immediately echoed. And so, the 2 groups of people turned around and left without any hesitation. Yao Yao, is there something wrong with them? They've been waiting in line for so long. It's almost their turn, and they're leaving? Yushu looked at the 2 groups of people as if they were idiots. Who knows? But it's good that they're leaving. It'll be our turn soon. Meng Yao was a little troubled as well. But it was a good thing that they were leaving. They didn't have to wait anymore. Lin Yi, on the other hand, looked at the 2 groups of people coldly, a cold smile on his lips. Making a move already? Inside the haunted house? Next, the worker opened the door and looked at Meng Yao's group. Is that you guys? Are the 3 of you together? Yes, is it our turn? Meng Yao asked. We're here. Give me the tickets, and you can go in. The staff took the ticket from Meng Yao's hand and threw it into the box without even looking at it, making Lin Yi look down on them. They didn't even know how to put on an act. Were they in such a hurry to get them in? Meng Yao, Yushu, and Lin Yi entered the haunted house one after another, and the door slammed shut behind them. Argah! Meng Yao couldn't help but shiver. She knew it was fake, but the creepy atmosphere in the haunted house still made her shiver. Shoo, hold on to me. Don't run around. It's pretty scary in here. Meng Yao tried to maintain the demeanor of a big sister, but there was a hint of fear in her voice. She wanted Yushu to hold on to her, so that Yushu wouldn't be afraid. But anyone could tell that Meng Yao was just putting on a brave front. Hee Yao Yao, are you scared? Yushu wasn't a coward. She wasn't scared even after hearing the screams. Who said I'm scared? Meng Yao wouldn't admit that she was scared. These things are fake, they're just scaring people. What's there to be scared of? Let's go. Lin Yi, follow behind us. Don't go too far. Chapter 260. Yushu Ghost Catcher Part 1. Back in the primeval forest, every step taken was filled with poisonous beasts and venomous bugs. That was the real deal. But these things were nothing in Lin Yi's eyes. How could someone who'd lived in that kind of environment be afraid of ghosts? Ugh! An old lady with blood dripping from her eyes floated past Mingyao's eyes. Mingyao was startled, grabbing onto Yushu's hand tightly. She regretted coming here. If she'd known how scary this thing was. Hehe, Yao Yao, it's a lie. Yushu's hand went through the old lady's body. See, it's fake, right? It's just a 3D slideshow. Oh. Mingyao calmed down after seeing Yushu's demonstration. And this was only the beginning. The deeper they went, the scarier it got. Other than the ghosts that would appear out of nowhere, there were also some zombies jumping out of the coffins, making Mingyao's heart skip a beat. Whoosh! A zombie with pus all over its body sat up abruptly, shooting a jet of black blood at Mingyao. Ah! Mingyao screamed as she backed away subconsciously, bumping into Lin Yi. What? What are you doing behind me? Didn't you tell me to follow you? Lin Yi shrugged. It's fake, it's just a mist of light. Oh! Mingyao was a little embarrassed. It was true that she'd told Lin Yi to stand behind her, because she was afraid that something might ambush them from behind. But after Lin Yi's explanation, Mingyao realized that the blood sword was just an illusion. It wasn't real at all. After a couple of scares, Mingyao's courage started to grow. What was there to be afraid of? She could see it, but she couldn't touch it. What was there to be afraid of? Mingyao watched as Yushu waved her hands around to catch the monsters, and she let loose as well. She started punching and kicking like Yushu, having fun. Pack! Mingyao felt someone slap her arrowhead, thinking that it was Lin Yi. Lin Yi, what are you doing? Don't mess around, I'm having fun. Pack! That hand slapped Mingyao again, pissing her off. She turned her head to the side. Lin Yi, you. Ah! Mingyao shrieked as she saw a faceless man patting her shoulder. Of course, the faceless man wasn't scary. What was scary was that the faceless man's hand wasn't an illusion, but a real slap on his body. Yao sis, what's wrong? Yushu was in the middle of fighting the ghost when she heard Mingyao scream. She turned around to see a faceless person patting Mingyao's shoulder. Yushu was a little puzzled. Weren't the things in here illusions? Why wasn't the faceless man one? Yushu quickly walked over to Mingyao's side and reached out to touch the faceless man's face. I can touch it. Did you get an actual item? I'm a faceless man, I'm going to eat you all. Ma growled in a low voice, frustrated that Yushu was grabbing him. Yushu bro was only asking him to play along, so he didn't dare act rashly. Lin Yi, on the other hand, looked at Ma interested. Lin Yi could tell from the faceless man's shoes that it was Ma, the one who'd been tailing them all this time. He had a rough idea of what they were up to. These people were really ruthless, trying to scare Mingyao to death by pretending to be ghosts? What were they thinking? Didn't they know that Mingyao had a clown by her side? Even if Mingyao was a coward, there was no way she'd be scared to death by Yushu. But even if this Ma was weak, and Lin Yi could tell that he was just pretending to be a ghost, Lin Yi still kept his guard up. If this Ma did anything to harm Mingyao, Lin Yi would be the first to act. Lin Yi didn't think that they'd do something like that in the haunted house. If they did, they wouldn't have to wait until they were in the haunted house. They could do it anywhere else. Yao sis, look at this faceless man, he's pretty good at it. Look at how thick his face is, he can even pull. Yushu said as she pulled on the faceless man's face with all her might, stretching it out a few centimeters. Ouch! Ma almost teared up from the pain. Why wasn't this girl afraid of him? How dare she pinch a ghost's face? How dare she? Is that so? Mingyao wasn't scared anymore. She reached out and pulled on the other half of the faceless man's face, and both sides of Ma's face were pulled up at the same time. His mouth was pulled into the shape of a ladle, and he couldn't scream even if he wanted to. Whoa! I'm a faceless man, I'm going to eat you all. Ma was on the verge of crying. Can't you say something else to scare people? Yushu was a little speechless. Yao sis, get out of the way, I'll kill him. Oh okay. Mingyao dodged to the side, but Yushu raised her leg and kicked the faceless man's crotch. Ma's eyes rolled back, and he fainted from the pain. Hey! Yushu waved her hands in the air excitedly. Yao Yao, I'm so good. I killed a faceless man. Shoo, can't you kick this model until it's broken? Why isn't he moving? Meng Yao naturally didn't think that the faceless man was a person. She thought that it was a model that Yushu's kick had stopped working. Ugh. It's fine, it's your daddy's theme park. Someone'll fix it even if it's broken. Yushu said after some thought. That's true. Meng Yao didn't really mind. She didn't care about something as small as this after all. As far as she was concerned, she could just throw it away. Not far away, Mao Xing's face twitched a couple of times, and Yuchu was sweating as well. Wasn't this girl a little too much? Not only did she pinch Ma's face, but she also did a climax kick to the groin, cutting off Ma's lineage. Jean bro, what do we do? Yuchu was a little nervous. Looks like we'll have to go a little harder. Mao Xing said with a cold smile. Let's go. Yushu continued swinging her fists at the monsters after taking care of the faceless man, only to realize that the other faceless man was the only one that was real. She couldn't touch them at all. Laney looked at Ma pitifully, feeling a chill in his heart. This Yushu girl sure was ruthless. He hadn't even made a move, and Ma was crippled by her kick. Chapter 261. Chapter 261 Yushu Ghost Hunter, Part 2? Ah! Meng Yao jumped in fright. How did this zombie know her name? She didn't care about the other zombies, but this zombie was shouting her name. How could she not be afraid? Yushu was puzzled. Yao Yao, is this zombie intelligent? It even knows your name? How would I know? Shoo, I'm a little scared. Meng Yao was starting to feel weird. How did this zombie know her name? Maybe the staff of the amusement park recognized you as Uncle Chu's daughter and changed the procedure to please you? Yushu thought about it. It was the only possibility. She couldn't think of any other possibilities, since there was no need to register one's name when buying a ticket. Shoo, I'm a little scared. Let's go. Meng Yao didn't want to stay here any longer. The things here were making her uncomfortable. It's fine, Yao Yao. Let me help you get rid of this zombie. Yushu, on the other hand, charged at the zombie excitedly. La la la, I'm a little expert at ghost hunting. Yushu rushed to the zombie's side and stomped down hard on the zombie's instep, causing Yushu to howl in pain as he bounced to the side on his tiptoes. Much faster than before. Yay! Yao Yao, look! I beat the zombie away. Yushu said with a triumphant smile on her face as she watched the zombie run away. What a good program design. Let's get Uncle Chu to praise him. This zombie can still run away after getting stepped on. Meng Yao was amused by Yushu. She now believed Yushu's conjecture that someone must have recognized her identity as Miss Chu and purposely changed the haunted house's computer program to please her. Meng Yao's eyes lit up at the sight of Yushu. Meng Yao wasn't that scared anymore after Yushu's teasing. She turned to Lin Yi as she watched the zombie run away faster than a rabbit. Lin Yi, go catch that zombie for me. Okay. Lin Yi nodded. Yu Chuzhang immediately cursed inwardly. Could it be that this lady is thinking of some kind of trick to mess with me again? He was just about to speed up and leave this place when he felt someone grab him by the back of his neck. His body lightened, and he was sent flying, landing heavily at Meng Yao and Yushu's feet. Ha, the zombies are back. Yao Yao sis, let's continue playing zombies. With that, Yushu jumped up from the ground and stomped on Yuchu's stomach with both feet, stomping and kicking it. Yuchu let out a blood-curdling scream. He felt as if his intestines were about to be trampled out. His eyes rolled back from the pain, and he fainted. Boring, Yushu said as she jumped down after stomping on the zombie a couple more times. This zombie's quality is really bad. I only stepped on it a couple of times, and it's already broken. I wonder which company made it. Tell Uncle Chu to complain about them. Haha, Meng Yao found it funny. That was a model for the haunted house. It'd be a wonder if it wasn't broken after you stepped on it. Mao Xing looked at Yuchu, a black line forming on his forehead. Why was this Yushu girl even fiercer than that Lenny bodyguard? His plan was basically ruined by Yushu, and there was no point in trying to scare Meng Yao anymore. Meng Yao wouldn't be scared anymore. Mao Xing was a little resentful. Meng Yao was clearly afraid of ghosts, and she was already terrified when Ma patted her. If he and Yuchu had cooperated, Meng Yao would have been scared out of her wits. In actuality, he could tell that Meng Yao was really scared of these things, but Yushu just had to start messing around with Ma the moment he appeared. Not only did she break Ma's line, but Zhang Yuxing's intestines had probably shifted as well. What the hell was going on? Getting stepped on instead of pretending to be a ghost. Was there anything that unlucky in this world? Could it be even more unlucky? His plan of scaring Meng Yao to death wasn't going to work anymore, and Mao Xing looked a little regretful. Still, he wouldn't continue with something he couldn't do. There was no point in pretending to be a ghost anymore, and he decided to leave first. He'd have to figure out the next step of his plan. He had to kill Meng Yao today. Mao Xing turned to leave when he heard Yushu's angry yell. "Where are you going, vampire?" Mao Xing's vision darkened, and he almost fell to the ground. Why wasn't she letting him run? Mao Xing was about to speed up his footsteps and ignore the girl when something smashed into the back of his head with a loud thud, followed by a wave of pain as he fell to the ground, staggering. Yeah, one hit. That vampire's too weak. Yushu was dancing with joy as she tossed out one of the zombie's shoes. "Shoo, why is there blood on the back of that vampire's head?" Meng Yao asked curiously as she looked at the fallen Mao Xing. "It looks real, I guess." Yushu didn't know what was going on, but she didn't mind. "Who cares, let's go Yao Yao. We'll continue hunting ghosts." "Oh, okay." Meng Yao nodded as she followed Yushu. Lenny looked at the two on the ground, speechless. These two idiots were just too unlucky to be treated as toys by Yushu. There weren't any more ghosts for Yushu to kill, and she was still looking forward to it even after they left the haunted house. Only 3 ghosts, that's a little too little. Yao Yao, can you suggest to Uncle Chu that we add a few more? We'll come again next time. I did, but you broke them again, didn't you? Meng Yao still hadn't realized that those 3 were real people, not props. Yushu stuck her tongue out. I regret not bringing a DV. I could have recorded it and let people see how cool I look when I fight ghosts. This trip to the haunted house took about an hour. Including the time they had spent waiting, it was almost noon. Yao Yao, should we go eat something first or go bungee jumping first? Yushu was a little hungry. Let's eat first, I'm a little hungry too. Meng Yao was a little tired after going around the haunted house. There were a lot of fast food restaurants in the amusement park, and Meng Yao and Yushu found a place with a decent ambience and found a place to sit down. Chapter 262. Chapter 262. Meng Yao's admirers. When Meng Yao and the others entered the restaurant, there were a couple of well-dressed men sitting in a corner of the restaurant. "And bro, isn't that your Chu lil sis?" one of the men in a white shirt said to the leader. Zhang Wen's eyes narrowed. He'd just returned to Songshan, and he'd only called a few of his old friends for a small gathering. He'd officially visit Meng Yao's house in 2 days, but he wasn't expecting to see Meng Yao, Yushu, and a stranger at an amusement park together. It made his heart ache. "I'll go say hi," Zhang Wen said to the 2 men beside him. "Do you need us to help?" the man in the white shirt asked. "Look at that guy. He's so poor that he's letting Meng Yao pay for his food. What the hell? Yeah, someone like that doesn't deserve to be Bro's opponent." The other man, who looked a bit feminine, spoke up as well. "It's fine, I'll go over myself." Zhang Wen waved his hand faintly and walked over to Meng Yao. "Yao Yao, long time no see. I didn't think you'd become a big girl in the blink of an eye." Zhang Wen greeted Meng Yao with a smile, his face full of warmth and friendliness, like a big brother next door. You're Zhang Wen, bro?" Meng Yao blinked, pleasantly surprised. "You're back." "Yeah, I just came back yesterday, and I'm having a gathering with a few of my old friends today. I didn't expect to see you here. I was planning on paying Uncle Chu and Yao Yao a formal visit this weekend." Zhang Wen sat down gracefully on the seat that used to belong to Lin Yi beside Meng Yao, turning to Yushu. "Shu, you're still so cute. Do you remember Zhang Wen, bro?" "Of course I do. He lost to my bro. How could I forget?" Hee. Yushu waved at Zhang Wen with a smile. A trace of gentleness flashed through Zhang Wen's eyes, but he quickly recovered his smile. "Yeah, Yutian bro's gone to the border now, and it's hard to see him. If he comes back, then all of us Songshan young masters will be back." A look of reminiscence appeared on Zhang Wen's face. Back in the day, under Yutian bro's leadership, How glorious were the Songshan young masters. Haha, we're all grown up now. Are you staying here for Songshan, bro Jangwen? Mengyao asked casually. Yeah, I've decided to stay here since I came back, because my lil sis Yao Yao is here. Jangwen smiled warmly as he looked at Mengyao. Mengyao didn't know why, but she felt a little depressed. Jangwen's words didn't have the intimacy they had when they were younger, and Jangwen's attitude made her feel uncomfortable instead. Ah, is that so? You're welcome then. Mengyao forced a smile. They were talking when Lenny came back with a plate of food. This restaurant only sold set meals, and Lenny ordered 3 of them randomly. Anyone who wanted to eat could have whatever they wanted. Lenny, on the other hand, kept his eyes on Jangwen. This guy knew Mengyao, but Lenny wasn't sure if he'd do anything to Mengyao. Mister, you're sitting in my seat. If you want to keep sitting here, you can ask the waiter to add another chair. Lenny said as he put the tray on the table. It was a 3-seater table. They could add another chair, but it'd be a little cramped. Haha, Yao Yao lil sis, who is this? Aren't you going to introduce me? Jangwen's words were polite, but there was a dark look in his eyes. He was clearly pissed off at Lin Yi for asking him to give up his seat so rudely. Jangwen didn't move at all as he spoke, showing no intention of giving up his seat to Lin Yi. Evidently, Lin Yi wasn't even worthy of being called an opponent in his eyes. He was wearing a shirt worth tens of kwai, and a pair of black casual pants. His outfit didn't even add up to 200 kwai. How could someone like this be a match for the 4 young masters of Songshan? Oh, he's Lin Yi, Yao Yao's bodyguard and shield. Yushu was the first to get to the point. Bodyguard and shield? Jangwen paused, not understanding what this bodyguard and shield meant. It'd be understandable if it were just a bodyguard. After all, a rich young miss wouldn't lack bodyguards. But a shield? That made him think of something. Shield. That was a very alluring profession. He's my boyfriend. Yushu explained with a smile. Shoo. Mengyao glared at Yushu helplessly, but for some reason, she didn't refute or explain Mengyao's glare, however, turned into a pout in Jangwen's eyes. As far as he was concerned, Mengyao and Lin Yi's relationship was probably a secret. Pengzhan would never let his daughter marry a man who wore clothes that cost less than 200 kwai, and who needed women to pay for their meals. So, their relationship was probably a secret. But Yushu had already exposed her, and Mengyao could only glare at her angrily. Jangwen didn't feel good about this at all. Fuck, a poor kid like him wanted to climb up the ladder? Was he dreaming? Oh, so you're lil sis Yao Yao's boyfriend. Jangwen stood up. No matter what, this kid was Mengyao's boyfriend now, so he could be considered a rival. His level was a little low, but he had the ability to win Mengyao's heart. Jangwen wouldn't let his guard down. He extended his hand to Lin Yi. Hello, I'm Jangwen, lil sis Yao Yao's big bro. We can be considered childhood friends. Jangwen thought that Lin Yi would be surprised and not know what to do after hearing his name. But he was disappointed. Lin Yi acted as if he didn't know him at all. He extended his hand faintly. Mr. N, my hand was stained with vegetable soup just now. I hope you don't mind? Jangwen's face froze. He looked at Lin Yi's hand, which was stained with oil. He didn't know what to say. If he shook hands with Lin Yi, he'd dirty his hand. But if he didn't shake hands with Lin Yi, he'd made the first move. Wouldn't he look like a gentleman if he went back on his words? Helpless, Jangwen could only shake hands with Lin Yi with a bitter face. Lin Yi, Mengyao's follower. Lin Yi introduced himself faintly. Chapter 263. See who dies first, ha. Jangwen smiled darkly as he grabbed a chair and sat down beside the 3. May I know what your position is, Mr. Lin? Oh, didn't I tell you? I'm a follower. Lin Yi smiled. What about you? What the fuck? Jangwen wanted to curse at him. He took Lin Yi's words as a provocation and disdain. Even if you were Mengyao's boyfriend, you didn't have to show off like that, did you? Not to mention that he wasn't even acknowledged by Pengzhan. As far as Jangwen was concerned, Pengzhan would never approve of Lin Yi. He didn't know what kind of bullshit luck the kid had, getting Mengyao's attention. Lin Yi's what about you? Ignited Jangwen's anger. This made Jangwen's heart even angrier. Back then, the 4 young masters of Pine Mountain were so glorious. Who didn't know about them? 5 years, 5 years of going their separate ways had made the youngsters of Songshan forget about the 4 young masters of Songshan. And now someone was asking Jiang Wen what he did for a living? I just came back from studying abroad, and I'm planning to invest in a company, Jiang Wen said faintly, a hint of arrogance in his voice. Oh, a company is good. I'm planning to open one as well, Lin Yi said casually. A flash of anger appeared on Jiang Wen's face. Opening a company as well? Do you think opening a company is as easy as playing house? Opening a company? Do you even have the capital? Oh, then what company are you planning to open, Mr. Lin? Jiang Wen's tone was mocking. I haven't decided yet. It wasn't that Lin Yi hadn't thought about it, but he didn't want to tell Jiang Wen about it. Opening a medicine company was something Lin Yi had decided on a long time ago. Haha, alright. Just let me know if you want to open a company, Mr. Lin. For Lil Sis Yao Yao's sake, I'll help as much as I can, Jiang Wen said sincerely. You help? That'd be the end of it, wouldn't it? Lin Yi curled his lips, not believing that Jiang Wen had any good intentions. With that, Jiang Wen stood up and left. There was no point in continuing this conversation with Lin Yi. He wanted to go back and investigate Lin Yi's background in detail. Know yourself and know your enemy. That's how you win every battle. This was Jiang Wen's motto. He hadn't even taken 2 steps when Jiang Wen clutched at his abdomen. His breathing quickening as beads of sweat rolled down his face. He wanted to say something, but before he could, he fell to the ground, his muscles twitching rhythmically as his face turned purple, and he started foaming at the mouth. Jiang Wen, bro. Meng Yao paused before rushing over worriedly. The 2 men with Jiang Wen came running over as well. Call the ambulance. The man in the white shirt evidently knew about Jiang Wen's situation. He was nervous, but he didn't panic. The man with the feminine face, on the other hand, took out his phone and called the emergency center. Meng Yao said quickly when the man in the white shirt came over. Taizao bro, Jiang Wen bro's condition. Where's the owner? Where's the owner of the restaurant? Get your ass out here, someone's been poisoned. The man in the white shirt was Su Taizao, one of the Songshan 4. A slightly plump man walked out from behind the counter, shaking as he looked at Taizao fearfully. Mister, this mister might not be poisoned, right? Why not? I told you not to put coriander and celery in the food, didn't you? Taizao glared at the owner. If anything happens to an bro, I'll make sure your restaurant closes. I didn't, I asked the kitchen, and they didn't put those things in the food. The owner said carefully. There's no coriander or celery in the food, the owner isn't lying. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had already walked over to the table Jiang Wen was at earlier, checking the food they'd eaten. But there's some chrysanthemum in this vegetable soup. If I'm not wrong, Jiang Wen should be allergic to vegetables like this. It'll cause seizures if he eats it. Chrysanthemum? Taizao paused at Lin Yi's words. There's chrysanthemum in the soup? Yeah, we do have chrysanthemum. The owner nodded. We always add chrysanthemum in our soup. It helps with the summer heat. Taizao frowned. Why didn't you say so earlier? But he knew that it wasn't the owner's fault. He didn't mention it when he ordered the food. But in the north, chrysanthemum was rarely used in soups, unlike celery and coriander. Taizao didn't think too much about it, but who knew that there really was chrysanthemum in the soup? With that, Lin Yi walked back to his seat, ready to eat his fast food. The reason why he went to check was because he didn't have a good impression of Jiang Wen, and he didn't want the owner to be dragged into this. The restaurant owner looked at Lin Yi gratefully. If Lin Yi hadn't discovered the problem in time, he wouldn't have been able to continue his business in peace if someone had accused him of food poisoning. Lin Yi, can you save Jiang Wen, bro? Meng Yao knew that Jiang Wen and Lin Yi were at loggerheads, but Jiang Wen was still her big brother since childhood, and they had a good relationship. If something really happened to Jiang Wen in front of her, Meng Yao wouldn't be able to live with her conscience. She heard Lin Yi's accurate diagnosis of Jiang Wen's illness, and subconsciously put her hopes on Lin Yi. She didn't know when it started, but Lin Yi beside her had become an omnipotent being. Cooking, parking, cleaning up gangsters. Even when Shu was stuck between the bars, she'd go to Lin Yi for help. As long as she had a request, Lin Yi would do it. This made Meng Yao rely on Lin Yi. Oh, I can, but I don't want to, Lin Yi said as he looked at Jiang Wen. You dashed. Taizao was a little pissed off at Lin Yi's words. How can you be like this? Not help. Let me tell you, do you know what Jiang Wen's family does? If they find out that you're not going to help, you'll die. Oh, wait for the ambulance then. He won't die in 10 minutes. Linny looked at Tai Zhao as if he was looking at an idiot. Then I'm not going to help him. Let's see if he dies first, or if I die first. Chapter 264. Chapter 264. Vomit all over his body. Oh, how unlucky. Tai Zhao bro, Jiang Wen bro died because of one sentence you said. Yushu shook her head as she looked at Jiang Wen on the ground. To be honest, Yushu didn't like Jiang Wen as a person. There was always a dark aura around him, especially when he was chasing after her bestie, Yao Yao. Yushu didn't have a good impression of him. She was going to marry the same man as Yao Yao. And if Yao Yao married Jiang Wen, wouldn't she have to marry Jiang Wen as well? Yushu didn't like marrying Jiang Wen, and so it was better if Jiang Wen died. Yao Yao couldn't marry a dead man. Although, Yushu didn't think that Yao Yao would be stupid enough to marry Jiang Wen. The two were childhood sweethearts. And Jiang Wen was obviously interested in Yao Yao. What if Uncle Chu got hot-headed and married Yao Yao off? As a result, Yushu was overjoyed to see Jiang Wen about to die, but innocently pushed all the blame onto Tai Zhao. Shu, don't talk nonsense. Meng Yao didn't know if she should cry or laugh. Her bestie always did funny things in times of crisis. Meng Yao knew what Yushu was thinking, and naturally, Meng Yao didn't like Jiang Wen. She only had brotherly feelings for Jiang Wen, nothing else. But she couldn't let Jiang Wen die in front of her. Putting aside the relationship between her family and Jiang Wen's family, even if her dad didn't blame her, Jiang Wen was still very nice to her when she was young, always tolerating her temper. Meng Yao didn't have a brother above her, so she treated Chun Yutian and Jiang Wen as her own brothers. I'm not talking nonsense, Tai Zhao bro killed Jiang Wen bro. Yushu said seriously. I know. Tai Zhao bro must still hate Jiang Wen bro, and that's why he's trying to kill him. Why else would he stop Shield bro from saving him? Yushu wanted the world to be in chaos. It was Linny who didn't want to save him, and Tai Zhao had said something he shouldn't have. But now it was Tai Zhao trying to kill Jiang Wen. Shu, what are you talking about? Why would I hate brother-in? Tai Zhao knew Yushu's personality, and he knew that he couldn't afford to piss her off. He was pissed, but he had to defend himself. Because Bro stole your girlfriend. Yushu giggled. Tai Zhao's face darkened as Yushu hit the nail on the head, but he quickly got his emotions under control. I've forgotten what happened in school a long time ago. I don't hold grudges or anything. Brother Tai Zhao, little Shu, let's not talk about this anymore. Meng Yao looked worriedly at Jiang Wen, who was breathing faster and faster. She turned to Linny. Linny, can you please save him? Is this my job? Linny asked. Yeah. Meng Yao hesitated. It's a personal request. All right. Linny didn't want to stick his nose into other people's business, but since Meng Yao was begging him, Linny couldn't say no. If Meng Yao were to say that it was her job, and that she had to do it, Linny might have resisted a little, but since Meng Yao said that it was a personal request, he had no choice but to do it. Linny came to Jiang Wen's side unwillingly, opening his eyelids to take a look. Hey, help me hold him up. All right. Tai Zhao didn't know what Linny was doing, but since Linny was able to pinpoint the cause of Jiang Wen's illness, and Meng Yao was asking him to save Jiang Wen, he could only place his hopes on Linny. It had been 10 minutes now, and there was still no sound of an ambulance. It was just as Linny said. Jiang Wen might have hung up before the ambulance even arrived. Tai Zhao helped Jiang Wen up, and Linny started pressing on a couple of acupoints on his back. Meng Yao and Yushu stood in front of Jiang Wen, nervous and curious. Stay away, Linny said as he looked at Meng Yao and Yushu. Oh. Meng Yao and Yushu didn't know what was going on, but since Linny had given the order, they moved to the side. What about me? Tai Zhao didn't know if Linny wanted him to move away as well. He'll fall to the ground the moment you leave. Linny rolled his eyes. You don't mind him, do you? I don't mind him. Tai Zhao blinked, confused. He thought that Linny was asking if he'd mind him holding Jiang Wen like this. Wah! As soon as Tai Zhao's words left his mouth, Jiang Wen spat out all the food he'd been eating, splashing everywhere. But the tragic thing was that Tai Zhao, who was supporting Jiang Wen, got sprayed all over him. his face and head covered in Jiang Wen's vomit. Taizao's expression froze. He wanted to let go and run away, but he forced himself to hold back. Su bro. The feminine-looking man was evidently Taizao's follower. He quickly handed Taizao a napkin when he saw the vomit all over him. Taizao was disgusted, but he waved his hand anyway. Jiang Wen's eyes were moving, and this meant that Jiang Wen was about to wake up. Taizao, naturally, couldn't just wipe Jiang Wen's face when he woke up. And bro, how do you feel? Taizao, I'm much better. Jiang Wen was weak, but he could still form a complete sentence. Linny let go of his hand and stood up, not even looking at Jiang Wen. You're not going to die. You'll just have to pump your stomach later. A complicated look flashed across Jiang Wen's face. Naturally, he knew that Linny had saved him, and he was just feeling uncomfortable, not unconscious. As a love rival of Linny, Jiang Wen didn't feel good at all. He would have died if Linny hadn't saved him, but he couldn't lower his head to Lin Yi and give up on Meng Yao. He hesitated for a while before weakly spitting out a few words to Lin Yi. Mr. Lin, thank you. I'll remember what you did today. I'll repay you in the future. No need, I don't need you to do anything. Lin Yi waved his hand, not interested in Jiang Wen's repayment at all. Chapter 265. Chapter 265. Change of impression. Although the restaurant was vomited all over the floor, the restaurant owner had no complaints. As long as this person didn't die here, it would be a great fortune. Otherwise, even if it wasn't because of him, the restaurant would absolutely not be able to continue operating if someone died from eating. No matter what, I still have to thank you. I, Jiang Wen, don't like to owe people favors. I'll return the favor today. Jiang Wen didn't mind what Lin Yi was saying. The two were enemies before, and the only reason Lin Yi was willing to help was because of Meng Yao. Jiang Wen knew that very well. He looked at Meng Yao gratefully. Yao, bro, Jiang Wen didn't treat you well for nothing. As for Yushu, Jiang Wen had nothing to say. That was just how the girl was, messing with whoever she didn't like. Jiang Wen didn't know what he'd done to piss her off, but she'd never liked him at all. It's nothing, as long as you're fine. Meng Yao breathed out in relief after seeing that Jiang Wen wasn't in danger. But you should still do what Lin Yi said and pump your stomach. You'll be fine that way. Unknowingly, Meng Yao had started treating Lin Yi as her encyclopedia. She didn't know when Lin Yi's words had started affecting her deeply. Of course. Jiang Wen smiled, his heart aching. Meng Yao used to listen to him like this, treating her big brother's words like the truth. She'd fight whoever dared to argue with her. But now another man had appeared in her life. Jiang Wen wasn't willing to accept it. He'd thought that he'd be able to officially ask Meng Yao out when he got back from studying abroad. But Meng Yao had just started university. According to House Chu's teachings, there was no way they'd let Meng Yao get into a relationship that early. As a result, Jiang Wen returned to Songshan full of confidence. He didn't even ask about Meng Yao's situation beforehand, nor did he rush to visit her. Instead, he went to Taizao, one of the 4 young masters of Songshan, to catch up. He didn't think that he'd run into Meng Yao in the amusement park's restaurant, only to find out that she was already taken. Her man, on the other hand, looked extremely ordinary. Just when Jiang Wen was wondering if there was something wrong with Meng Yao's taste, and why she'd chosen a poor kid as her lover, Lin Yi's move completely changed his mind. He'd only taken one look at the soup he'd drunk, and he'd been able to determine the cause of his illness. He'd just massaged his back a couple times, and he'd spit out all the food he'd eaten. Was that something a normal person could do? After hearing the conversation between Meng Yao and Lin Yi, Jiang Wen was even more certain that he'd made a mistake. Lin Yi wasn't as simple as he looked. Lin Yi, can you save Jiang Wen, bro? Oh, I can, but I don't want to. These few simple sentences were enough to prove that Lin Yi's abilities weren't limited to this. Perhaps even more. After all, saving someone was as easy as lifting a finger. Jiang Wen couldn't help but re-evaluate his opponent's level. This was the first time he'd taken this rival in love seriously. All he'd had before was mockery, disdain, and confidence. The ambulance's siren rang out. Even at an amusement park, ambulances were able to pass through without any obstructions. It was just that the distance from the hospital to the amusement park wasn't that short, and so the ambulance had only just arrived when Jiang Wen was saved. A couple of medical staff walked in quickly. "Where's the patient?" "Over here." Taizao quickly waved at the medical staff. "He's allergic to food, he's vomited it out already. He needs to have his stomach pumped." "All right, are you the patient's family?" The medical staff prepared to put Jiang Wen on a stretcher, but Jiang Wen waved his hand, indicating that he could walk. He didn't want to lose face in front of Meng Yao and his love rival, no matter how painful it was. "I'm his friend," Taizao said to the medical staff. "No need for the stretcher, I'll hold him." Jiang Wen walked out of the restaurant with Taizao's support, and the restaurant owner had the waiters clean up the mess Jiang Wen had vomited. Even so, most of the customers chose to leave. After all, the scene just now was too disgusting. Meng Yao and Yushu had lost their appetites as well. They were about to tell Lin Yi to leave when they raised their heads to see Lin Yi eating at the table. Meng Yao didn't know what to say. Wasn't that disgusting? In fact, it wasn't even disgusting to Lin Yi at all. It was much more disgusting than that, and he still had to eat. The restaurant owner, on the other hand, felt a little embarrassed as he refunded Lin Yi's money. Lin Yi had solved a huge problem for him, and Meng Yao and Yushu couldn't eat anymore. The owner felt bad. Surprisingly, Meng Yao didn't scold Lin Yi after seeing him enjoying his food. She just sat there quietly waiting for him to finish. She couldn't see through this man anymore. He seemed to know nothing, and yet he seemed to know everything at the same time. He seemed to be a shameless pervert, but he also seemed to be someone with strong principles. Meng Yao wasn't stupid, actually. She wouldn't have been able to stay in the top 10 of Songshan's first school, otherwise. She'd been against it when her father had sent Lin Yi to her, and she'd even been a little annoyed. She didn't understand what her father was doing with a migrant worker. But after spending some time with him, Meng Yao realized that Lin Yi really was a capable man. She didn't want to admit it, but she slowly accepted it. "You two aren't eating anymore? I'll eat all of them," Lin Yi said as he looked at the other 2 fast food boxes on the table. "You eat all of them?" Meng Yao nodded. Lin Yi gobbled down the other 2 plates of fast food like a whirlwind. "Wow, Shield bro, you're amazing," Yushu said as she looked at the 3 empty boxes. "Let's go bungee jumping after eating." Meng Yao evidently wasn't affected by what happened earlier. It was just her appetite that was affected. Jiang Wen gave her a very unfamiliar feeling this time, especially after the hostility he showed towards Lin Yi. Meng Yao couldn't help but feel a little disgusted by him. His image as the big brother next door collapsed. "Huh. Okay." Lin Yi, Meng Yao, and Yushu made their way to the restaurant's entrance. But Lin Yi shot a meaningful glance at a young man with a face as swollen as a steamed bun. Lin Yi smiled faintly before turning around to leave. Chapter 266. Chapter 266. Plan again, I got it, Yuchu said with a dark face. His internal organs were still hurting, and while Yushu wasn't heavy, that stomp on his stomach a couple of times wasn't something anyone would feel good about. Maosheng's face was as black as it could be. There was a bandage on the back of his head from where Yuchu's leather shoe had hit him. Maosheng regretted his impulsiveness. He wouldn't have ended up like this if he hadn't come up with such a stupid idea in the heat of the moment. Maosheng's plan was doable as a whole, but he'd chosen the wrong place and target. If it had been just Meng Yao alone, his plan might have worked, since she wasn't as brave as Yushu. But he'd chosen to do it when Meng Yao was with Yushu and Lin Yi, reducing the effect of his plan by half. The worst part was that he'd chosen the wrong place. Pretending to be a ghost in a haunted house was scary, but it was a haunted house, and it gave the people inside the house the impression that it was a haunted house, and that the ghosts inside were all fake. If Maosheng were to go scare Meng Yao at night with no one around, he'd probably scare Meng Yao to death. Scaring people to death. These words were not just empty words. There was a precedent for this after all. There'd been a newspaper article about a psychotic high school student who liked to go out at night to scare people, and he'd really scared a couple of people to death. Maosheng would have thought about the feasibility of this plan under normal circumstances, since he was a cautious person. But time was of the essence today, and Yuchu was fanning the flames as well. That was why Maosheng had made such a grave mistake. People were afraid of being hot-headed, and even more afraid of having someone else who was just as hot-headed as them supporting them. Even the smartest person would make mistakes under these circumstances. Many criminals did things that they'd regret for the rest of their lives under the instigation of their accomplices. Didn't they know the consequences of their crimes? No. Therefore, today's matter was based on this principle. This seemingly reasonable, but actually unreasonable plan was only able to be carried out with the support and approval of Zhang Yuzhou. Yuchu's only thought was to take care of Meng Yao as soon as possible, throwing Peng Zhan into confusion, so that he could give Master Bing a big present. He was in a rush to make a contribution. Mao Sheng, on the other hand, wanted to settle things with Meng Yao as soon as possible, so that his family could take over Peng Zhan Industries. Time waited for no man, and he'd act on impulse. Now that they'd calmed down, Mao Sheng and Yuchu realized how laughable and flawed their plan had been. They'd tried to use a newspaper report, but they'd ended up going for wool and coming home shorn. They'd shot themselves in the foot, and now they were covered in wounds. "Jean bro, they're going bungee jumping. What do we do?" Yuchu asked as he turned to Mao Sheng. "This time, I must think of a way to kill him in one strike. I can't act rashly anymore. I was too careless," Mao Sheng said hatefully. "Alright Jean bro, I'm responsible for this as well," Yuchu said with a wave of his hand. Guan Yu was one of the 5 tiger generals back in the Three Kingdoms period, and even he lost Jingzhou because of his carelessness. "We underestimated our enemy." "Yeah, you're right." Mao Sheng's mood lightened up quite a bit after hearing Yuchu's words. Even Guan Yu lost Jingzhou because of his carelessness, so what if he made a mistake? "Jean bro, I think that bungee jumping is a good chance for us to kill Meng Yao," Yuchu said with a chuckle. He'd gotten rid of Meng Yao because he wanted to get Peng Zhan Industries' real estate company and get on Master Bing's good side. But now he was filled with hatred and rage. If it weren't for Meng Yao, his intestines would have been stomped out of his stomach. Yuchu wouldn't be able to take this lying down if he didn't get his revenge. "Oh, what do you mean?" Mao Sheng didn't dare make a rash decision this time. He needed to think carefully before deciding on the feasibility of the plan. "Jean bro, if there's an accident during the bungee jumping, like the rope snapping, haha, no one would think it was murder. And that's easier to pull off, isn't it?" Yuchu said with a chuckle. "Yeah, if the rope snaps during the bungee jumping, that's a good idea." Mao Sheng nodded. He had to admit that Yuchu's suggestion was quite constructive. If there was an accident during the bungee jumping, the possibility of being suspected was lower, and even if there was suspicion, it wouldn't be easy to find evidence. As long as it was handled properly, most of the evidence could be removed, and the result would only be the suspension of the bungee jumping program. It wouldn't have much of an impact on the company, and Mao Sheng didn't care at all. "Yeah, we just need to figure out when Meng Yao's going to jump, and we'll give her a rope that's been tampered with. There's the ocean at the bottom of the valley, and she'll be washed away by the waves if she falls in. We just need to delay the rescue a little longer, and Meng Yao's basically dead," Yuchu said. "It's less risky and easier as well." "Yeah, bungee jumping. How about this? I'll give Manager Zhang a call and have him talk to Ma directly. The two of us won't show up." Mao Sheng's head was wrapped in bandages, and he didn't want to go out and embarrass himself. In fact, he was a little too eye-catching right now. He'd attract a lot of attention if he went out, and he didn't want Meng Yao and Yushu to get suspicious. He didn't have many chances to meet Meng Yao, but they'd seen each other a couple of times at banquets, and Mao Sheng was afraid that Meng Yao would recognize him. Mao Sheng called Manager Zhang, since he'd been the one in charge of the haunted house. He didn't ask too many questions, and contacted Ma to prepare the next step of the plan. Manager Zhang was a direct descendant of House Jin, and through Gubong's protection in the company, he'd gotten quite a bit of money from the amusement park. Naturally, most of the money ended up in House Jin's pockets, but Manager Zhang had gotten quite a bit of it for himself. He'd be dead if this got out, and he didn't dare say anything when Mao Sheng asked him to. Therefore, when the mahjong player Zhang Yuzhou told Manager Zhang about his plan, Manager Zhang didn't say anything else, and directly brought Ma to the bungee jumping office. Chapter 267. Wait and see. Bungee jumping is a new and exciting outdoor leisure activity. The jumper stands on a bridge, tower, building, crane, or even a hot air balloon, which is about 40 meters high, which is equivalent to the height of a 10-story building, and ties a long rubber strip at one end to the ankle joint. After that, he stretches out his arms, puts his legs together, and jumps down head first. The rubber strip tied to the jumper's ankle was long enough to allow the jumper to enjoy a few seconds of free fall in the air. When the body was a certain distance from the ground, the rubber rope would be pulled and taut, stopping the body from falling any further. When the body reached the lowest point, the rubber would spring up again, and the person would be pulled up and back down again. This process repeated many times, until the elasticity of the rope disappeared. Lenny bought 3 tickets, and Ma, the bungee jumper, ran over to Lin Yi's group, thinking that Lenny didn't know who he was. Yao Yao, look at this guy's face. It's weird. It's swollen. Yushu said as she looked at Ma's face curiously. I don't know, maybe someone pinched him. Shu, why do you care about him? Meng Yao said nervously at the thought of bungee jumping. She was a bit more timid than Yushu. She'd been looking forward to bungee jumping, because she wanted to vent the unhappiness in her heart. But now that she was actually going to bungee jump, she couldn't help but feel nervous. Oh, Yushu looked at Ma curiously. Your face, it's really weird. Ma rolled his eyes inwardly. Weird. Wasn't it because you pinched him? And you're calling me weird? But on the surface, Ma could only smile apologetically. I was born like this, haha. 3 of you, please come with me to sign the agreement, and take your weight and blood pressure. Before bungee jumping, the participants had to sign a safety agreement, stating that they didn't have any diseases like heart disease or myopia. The theme park wouldn't be responsible for any accidents caused by hiding their condition. Then there was the insurance, which was included in the price of the tickets. Since Ma wanted to kill Meng Yao in the first place, he didn't pay much attention to the blood pressure and weight measurements. He just waved his hand to indicate that there were no problems. Alright, that's enough. Who wants to go first? Little Mahjong put away the signed agreement and asked. Yao Yao, you go first. I'll let you have the first time. Yushu giggled as she looked at Meng Yao. We agreed on it. Good my ass. Meng Yao glared at Yushu, but said faintly. Fine, I'll go first. What the two agreed on wasn't bungee jumping, but the promise of marrying the same man. Meng Yao was the older sister. Of course, he'd let her have the wedding night. But this was something she could talk about when she was younger. But now that she was older, Meng Yao felt a little embarrassed. Ma was overjoyed when he heard Meng Yao's words. Meng Yao went bungee jumping first. It'd be much easier for him. Please follow me. Meng Yao and Yushu walked in front with Lin Yi at the back. Lin Yi didn't know if he should expose Ma's identity, or pretend not to know. Lin Yi didn't know how Pengzhan's arrangements were going, so he didn't want to alert the enemy. After some hesitation, he dialed up Faubert number. Lin Yi wanted to see what Faubert had to say. Faubert, it's Lin Yi. I'm at the theme park, and there's someone trying to harm Miss Chu. Should I expose him, or? Lin Yi said softly. Hold on, I'll ask Mr. Chu. Faubert said, and the phone went silent. After a while, Faubert's voice came through again. Mr. Lin, I've talked to Mr. Chu. He said that it's best if you don't alert the enemy. He's in the middle of setting up a trap, and he's worried that the enemy might do something desperate if you alert them. I understand, I'll wait and see. Lin Yi nodded. Of course, this is under the premise that Yao Yao's safety is guaranteed. If someone threatens Yao Yao's safety, please don't hold back, Mr. Lin. Faubert added. Of course, I'll protect Yao Yao and Shu. But Faubert, if you have time, it's best if you come to the theme park as well. I want to follow them after this, and see who's behind them. Lin Yi said. Alright, I'll head over now. I'll drive fast, and I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Where are you at the theme park? Faubert asked. Bungee jumping here. Lin Yi said. Okay, I'll be right there. After hanging up the phone with Faubert, Lin Yi quickly followed up. He acted as if he was just answering a call from a friend. Someone at Ma's level didn't notice anything wrong at all. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi didn't know that he was the faceless man in the haunted house yet. Lin Yi followed, only to see that Meng Yao was already tying the rope around her body under Ma's guidance. Lin Yi frowned. He wanted to stop her, but he remembered Faubert's words. He hesitated. Pengzhan didn't want him to alert the enemy. But what if these people did something to Mengyao while she was bungee jumping? It'd be too late even if Lin Yi wanted to save Mengyao. The best way was for Lin Yi and Mengyao to bungee jump together. That would reduce the risk to the lowest. But would Mengyao agree to it if the two of them were tied together? Just as Lin Yi was thinking about his next move, Mengyao looked at the waves at the bottom of the cliff. She was a little scared. I want to get ready. Ma didn't want to drag it out. But he couldn't do anything about it. The rope was tampered with, and only Mengyao could use it. Other tourists couldn't use it. Ma was reluctant, but he could only smile. Then get ready. But it's not a big deal. It's your first time bungee jumping, you'd be scared. You'd just close your eyes and go down. And when you open your eyes again, you'll see the world before you. Ma had bungee jumped before, so he was able to make sense of the situation. Mengyao didn't suspect anything, but Lin Yi had seen through it a long time ago. He couldn't help but find it funny. Mengyao's cowardice gave Lin Yi time to react. He walked to Mengyao's side and picked up the rope Mengyao was hanging from, wanting to take a closer look at it. Chapter 268. Running away. Ma was just fretting about not having a place to blame if something went wrong. And Lin Yi gave him the chance to push the blame onto Lin Yi. I'm just looking around. What's there to be nervous about? Lin Yi smiled faintly as he put the rope back. Faubert had told him not to alert the enemy, and Lin Yi naturally wouldn't start a fight with Ma right now. But the longer Mengyao dragged things out, the more time Faubert would have. Lin Yi, on the other hand, hoped that Mengyao could rest a little longer. Are you done resting? Ma was starting to panic. Miss, there's a time limit to this bungee jumping. If you stop here, the people behind you won't be able to continue, right? There's a lot of rope tracks, but what if there's too many people? Then, I'll try again. Mengyao was like everyone else who'd gone bungee jumping for the first time. She stood up impatiently under Ma's urging. It's nothing really. Just close your eyes and it'll be over. Ma cackled in his heart. You'll die if you don't open your eyes. Oh. Mengyao nodded as if she'd made up her mind. She walked to the edge of the cliff and looked down, feeling a little dizzy. She couldn't help but close her eyes. When she opened them again, her heart was filled with fear. No, I'm still scared. I need to get ready. Ma was helpless. He wanted nothing more than to kick Mengyao off the cliff and save his time. But he didn't dare do that in front of so many people. The rope breaking was an accident, but if he pushed Mengyao down, it'd be murder. Ma wasn't an idiot. There were a lot of people around, and Lin Yi and Yushu were watching as well. There was no way he'd do something like that. Miss, aren't you just wasting time? Ma said displeased. Shoo, maybe you go first. I'm a little scared, let me get ready. Mengyao went back to the bench she was resting on and sat down again. Oh, let me go first. Yao Yao, you're giving your first time to me? Yushu blinked excitedly. Don't overthink it. I'm talking about bungee jumping. Mengyao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bungee jumping is fine too. Yushu nodded. Alright, I'll go first then. Hey you puffy face, put the rope on me. I'll go first. Bulging face? Ma almost cried at the way Yushu called him. What puffy face? Wasn't it all because of you? My face was almost ripped off. And you still dare to say that I have a bulging face? How could you bully others like that? That's a little troublesome. I've already tied her up. Ma, naturally, didn't want to give the rope to Yushu. His target was Mengyao after all. Yushu dying wouldn't achieve the desired effect, and might even cause the opposite effect. Aya, why are you taking so long? I'll do it myself if you think it's too much trouble. Yushu said with a wave of her hand. Do it yourself. Why don't you go to the other cableways? Ma said, trying to stop Yushu. What for? There are other cableways, don't you see? Wouldn't I have to wait for half a day? It's easier to change the rope. Yushu said, not listening to Ma at all. Then, I'll ask for instructions. You know, I'm just a worker. And what you're doing is against the rules. My boss is gonna scold me if he sees this. Ma had no choice but to bring up his lowly status. Alright. Just ask for instructions then. Yushu was getting impatient, but didn't make things difficult for Ma. As far as she was concerned, There was no need to make things difficult for a lowly worker like him. Naturally, Yushu wouldn't insist. All right, I'll ask for instructions now. Ma took out his phone and was about to make the call when Yushu spoke again. Shield bro, I'm a little scared too. Why don't we jump together? Yushu looked down the cliff. It really was quite scary. She wasn't sure if she'd run away just like Meng Yao. Jump together? Lenny blinked, feeling a little tempted. Of course, it wasn't because he'd be able to get close to Yushu, but because he didn't want Yushu to jump down on her own. Lenny had been thinking about how he could make Yushu give up on the bungee jumping when Yushu wanted to switch with Meng Yao. The Jade had been giving him warnings a couple of times already, and while the warning signal was weak, indicating that it wasn't that dangerous, he was sure that there was something wrong with this bungee jumping. It wasn't too dangerous for him, but it was hard to say for Yushu. He was worried that Yushu would jump down on her own, but Yushu suggested jumping down with him, just as he was worrying about it. Yeah, we'll tie ourselves to the same rope and jump down together. That way I won't be scared anymore, alright shield bro? Yushu was actually scared as well. She was a little braver than Meng Yao, but who wouldn't be scared of a girl jumping down from a cliff like this? Especially since it was her first time jumping down. How could she not be scared? Only that Tigress Lingshan wouldn't be scared after her first jump, Yushu thought. She didn't think it was embarrassing at all. No. Meng Yao frowned at Yushu's suggestion. Shoo, wouldn't tying yourself to him be letting him take advantage of you? Take advantage of me? Yushu didn't think too much about it before, but she didn't think much of it after hearing Meng Yao's words. Didn't he do it at home before? It's not a big deal to do it again, right? Yao Yao, I really don't dare jump down on my own. Why don't you jump with shield bro? You do it then. Meng Yao humphed, thinking that her best friend was really retarded. What was wrong with taking advantage of her one more time? Would she get used to it after doing it again and again? But Meng Yao regretted it a little after saying it. She was actually looking forward to jumping down with Lin Yi. She wouldn't be scared with him by her side, would she? Meng Yao thought back to the time they met the robbers at the bank. With Lin Yi by her side, Meng Yao felt really safe and secure. Shield bro, don't you dare take advantage of me, Yushu said with a smile, not pushing it away. Chapter 269. The two jumped together. Ma was just going to pretend that he was making a phone call and reject Meng Yao's request. But Yushu's request to bungee jump with Meng Yao made him think of something else. This man seemed to be one of the boss's troubles. If he could kill this man this time, it would not be a waste of his efforts. Thinking of this, Xiao Ma did not dare to act on his own. He called Zhang Yuzhou. Yuchu bro, something's happened, Ma said in a hushed voice. Oh, what's wrong now? Yuchu's heart tightened. The plan couldn't have failed again, could it? Meng Yao was ready to bungee jump with the rope already, but she suddenly got scared and didn't dare jump anymore. Ma said in a hushed voice. Scared? Yuchu frowned. If she really doesn't want to jump, then don't force her. Don't lose the bigger picture. No Yuchu bro. The problem is that Yushu's planning to jump, and she's using the rope we tampered with before. Yuchu interrupted Ma before he could finish. That's not it Yuchu bro. It's best if we don't touch that Yushu, it'll cause big problems. Yuchu didn't know what kind of background Yushu had, but he'd heard that even Sihua bro's backer was wary of her. She wasn't someone to be messed with easily. She's going to bungee jump with that Lin Yi. I think it's an opportunity, Ma said. Lin Yi bungee jump with her? Wait. Yuchu was a little tempted, but he couldn't make the decision on his own. He needed to discuss it with Maosheng first. Putting the phone aside, Yuchu repeated Ma's words to Maosheng. Maosheng hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. Do it. Yushu's death would cause trouble, but it was an accident in Pengzhan's theme park. With the Chen's and Chu's relationship, they wouldn't hold a grudge against Yushu. At most, they'd just push out a scapegoat. But now that Lin Yi's dead, it'll be much easier for us to deal with Meng Yao next time. Yuchu nodded, relaying Maosheng's message to Ma, who, naturally, wouldn't stop Yushu from bungee jumping with the approval of the two bosses. Instead, he guided Yushu and Lin Yi together. Phew. Finally done. But shield bro, this rope's too tight. I'm having trouble breathing, Yushu said with a deep breath. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat as he felt the softness of Yushu's chest, and his body started reacting a little. Lin Yi was just an 18-year-old boy, after all, and it was only natural that he'd be moved by the idea of being tied up so intimately with a girl, especially a beautiful girl with a good figure. And it wasn't that Lin Yi didn't like her, at least he had a good impression of her. So it was normal for him to have a reaction. Lin Yi was a little awkward. He was about to explain when Yushu spoke up. "Shield bro, what's that? Is it killing me?" "Ugh." Lin Yi blinked as he looked at Yushu's innocent face. He didn't know what to say. "What's wrong?" Yushu looked at Lin Yi puzzled. She understood what was going on in the next moment. Yushu wasn't an ignorant girl, after all. She'd been in health classes before. Her face reddened a little as she shifted unnaturally, whispering threateningly, "Shield bro, are you having some unhealthy thoughts?" Yushu would have been fine if she hadn't moved, but now that she'd moved, Lin Yi's reaction intensified. Yushu's words were like a fuse. Was that a threat? Why did it sound like she was acting coquettishly? But Lin Yi was still very strong. It only took him a split second to recover. He knew that this was how Yushu usually talked to himself. She wasn't trying to seduce him or anything like that. And he was flirting with her best friend in front of the Mississippi. Wasn't that suicidal? He looked at Ming Yao, who was at the side, and saw that her face was dark. He quickly turned his head away innocently, but the rope around his waist really couldn't be moved. It was supposed to be tied to one person, but with two people tied to it, there wasn't much space left. Remembering that he was on a mission, Lin Yi suppressed the fire of lust in his heart and didn't do anything further. His body's reaction started to return to normal as well. A mission was a mission. Lin Yi was very clear about that. He couldn't get involved with his employer. That was a big taboo in the industry. Back then with Ning, with that in mind, Lin Yi's heart grew heavy once more. Even with Yushu in his arms, Lin Yi didn't have the same impulsiveness as before. This was the last mission. He hoped that he'd be able to complete it smoothly. That way, he wouldn't have to be bound by the rules of the industry anymore. "Are you ready?" Ma didn't have time to watch Lin Yi and Yushu flirt with each other. He had to get rid of the two as soon as possible and report back to the boss. "All right, can we jump now?" Yushu wasn't as scared as before with Lin Yi by her side. She looked down the cliff and grabbed Lin Yi's arm. "Shield bro, you have to hug me later, but don't take advantage of me." "Ah, okay." Lin Yi nodded. Lin Yi would have done it even if Yushu hadn't said it. The jade was ringing once more. There was definitely something wrong with the rope. Why wasn't Faubert here yet? Lin Yi didn't want to alert the enemy, but he didn't want to just jump off like that. The rope would break, and while it'd give Pingzhan an excuse to reorganize the company, jumping into the sea wasn't a good feeling either. Naturally, Ma didn't think that the two would be able to make it out alive after jumping into the sea. Both of them were tied up with ropes, and they couldn't swim at all. Wouldn't they die if no one came to rescue them, if they fell into the turbulent water? "Ready, can we jump now?" Ma said. "I'll count to 3 and you two jump together." "Wait." Lin Yi made a hand gesture cutting Ma off. "Is there anything else?" Ma frowned displeased. Lin Yi ignored him and pulled Yushu over to Ming Yao's side. Chapter 270. Chapter 270. Something happened. Lin Yi walked up to Ming Yao, lowering his head and putting his lips next to Ming Yao's ear. "Wah! What are you doing?" Ming Yao jumped in fright. Lin Yi's actions were a little ambiguous, especially when his breath was right beside her ear. It gave Ming Yao a weird feeling. Ming Yao subconsciously turned her head to the side, a little annoyed. Wasn't it enough that the guy was messing with her best friend? Was he messing with her now? "Faubert'll be here soon. Don't panic if something happens to me and Shu later. Don't move. Just wait here for Faubert." Lin Yi didn't answer Ming Yao's question, instead quickly whispering into her ear. Ming Yao blinked. She was just about to ask Lin Yi what was going on when Lin Yi stood up and smiled at her, before walking to the edge of the bungee jumping platform with Yushu. Pengzhan had told Lin Yi to wait and see, not wanting to fall out with Gubong so soon. There were still a lot of things in the company that hadn't been completed yet, and Gubong still had a lot of power in his hands. Falling out with him now would only make him more desperate. But Pengzhan never would have guessed that these people were trying to kill Meng Yao. He wouldn't have let Lin Yi jump in if he'd known that it would be dangerous, even if he had to go all out with them. But Lin Yi didn't really mind. He wouldn't die even if he did, and Pengzhan could use this as an excuse to reorganize the company. An accident at an amusement park wasn't a small thing. It was just an accident at best, but the amusement park was Gubang's business. Gubang wouldn't be able to escape the blame if something happened to the amusement park. "We can start now," Lin Yi said to Ma. "Alright, I'll count to 3 and you guys jump. It's no big deal, just close your eyes at first," Ma said to Lin Yi and Yushu in a very professional manner. Lin Yi nodded. Bungee jumping. It wasn't exciting at all for him. Jumping off cliffs and into the sea was a common occurrence for Lin Yi, and he was used to it. Yushu, on the other hand, was a little scared. Lin Yi could feel the girl's breathing quickening, a layer of sweat forming on her face. 1, 2, 3, jump. Ma was worried that Yushu would go back on her words again, but he pushed her away, causing her to stumble and fall towards the cliff with Lin Yi. Lin Yi was trying to buy some time for Faubert to come, but he didn't expect Ma to be this impatient. He was such an eyesore, but did the person behind him want him dead that badly? Ma had only pushed Yushu a little, and Lin Yi could have easily stabilized his footing, but that would definitely cause a conflict with Ma. So Lin Yi decided to jump off. The amusement park was a public place, and Lin Yi couldn't just kill Ma even if he were to turn against him. Turning against him would only make the person behind Ma desperate. Lin Yi didn't know the specifics of the mission, but Pengzhan was his first employer, and he had to be responsible for his employer's plans. "Ah!" Yushu shrieked as her arms tightened around Lin Yi, forgetting that she had to spread her arms out when bungee jumping. "Shoo, you're hugging me to death." Lin Yi was hurting from Yushu's arms. "Shield bro, I'm so scared." "Ah!" Yushu yelled as she fell downwards, finally reaching the end of the rope. The two of them paused for a moment before bouncing up with the help of the rope's elasticity. "It's okay, you can open your eyes now," Lin Yi said, thinking that Ma would definitely do something to the rope, and he and Yushu would fall into the sea. He'd wanted to find a place to land on the cliffside, but the cliffside was too slippery. They'd probably smoothed out the edges of the cliffside for the purpose of bungee jumping, in case the tourists got hurt. Meng Yao stared blankly at the empty bungee jumping platform. Lin Yi's words kept replaying in her head. "Faubert will be here soon. Don't be nervous if something happens to me and Shu, and don't move. Just wait here for Faubert." Would something happen to him? Why did he say that something would happen to him and Shu? Did he know something? Was he just joking around to scare her? Meng Yao was starting to get frustrated when she heard a commotion from the nearby tourists. The rope broke. Something happened. The man and the woman fell into the sea. Meng Yao was just about to ask when she saw more and more tourists rushing towards them, surrounding the edge of the cliff. Meng Yao quickly stood up and looked towards the direction of the crowd. What she saw shocked her. The rope that was tying Lin Yi and Shu had broken, and only half of it was left in the air. Lin Yi and Shu were nowhere to be found. All of a sudden Meng Yao's head buzzed. She was dumbfounded. Did something happen to Lin Yi and Yushu? Just like that? "Shu! Lin Yi!" Meng Yao pushed her way through the crowd, yelling Yushu's and Lin Yi's names at the top of her lungs. "Miss, are you a friend of the two who fell in?" An old auntie looked at Meng Yao sympathetically. "My condolences, miss. I heard that they didn't even show their heads when they fell in." Meng Yao felt like all her energy had been sucked out of her body after hearing the old auntie's words. She stared blankly at the rapid waves below. TSK, what's wrong with this theme park? Why is it so unsafe? They've been in there for so long, and there's no one to save them. Who's going to come here next time?" "Yeah, I just bought a ticket. It's lucky that they haven't started jumping yet. Who knows if I'd fallen too." The crowd was talking about Lin Yi and Yushu's bad luck, but no one was willing to jump into the sea to save them. It wasn't that people were too cold-blooded, but they might die before they could save them. Thinking back to what Lin Yi said to her before he jumped, Meng Yao suddenly understood. Had Lin Yi sensed the danger? Why else would he tell her not to worry if something happened to him and Shu? Chapter 271. To solve the problem easily, Lin E, you bastard. Why did you jump when you knew you'd be in trouble? Are you stupid? Mingyao didn't understand, but she wasn't stupid. It didn't take long for her to understand why Lin E would say something like that. He must have noticed something, and the accident this time was targeted at her. If she'd jumped first, then she'd be the one in trouble. That puffy face. Mingyao remembered the bungee jumper abruptly. She raised her head to look for him, but Ma was nowhere to be found. What made Mingyao feel relieved was that Lin E must have had a reason for jumping even though he'd sensed the danger. He should be fine. Mingyao didn't understand why Lin E would do that, but she calmed herself down. Lin E had jumped in for her. This made Mingyao very grateful. But why did he have to drag Shu along with him if he wanted to jump down? Her phone rang as she thought about the situation. She pulled it out subconsciously, looking at the caller ID disappointed. She'd hoped that it would be Lin E or Yushu, but it was Faubert instead. Hello, Faubert, Mingyao said. Miss Chu, where are you? I'm bungee jumping here, and I heard that there was an accident here. Someone fell in. I'm glad that you're fine, Faubert said, relieved. He came to the bungee jumping area to see a lot of people gathered around the cliff, not sure what they were doing. He asked a random passerby and found out that a man and a woman had been bungee jumping when the rope snapped, and they fell into the sea. Faubert jumped in fright. Lin E had called earlier to say that someone was after Mingyao, and they were bungee jumping here. Something happened here, and Faubert couldn't help but think that the two people who fell in were Mingyao and Lin E. Cold sweat started forming on his forehead, but Faubert calmed down a lot when he heard Mingyao's voice. Faubert, Lin E and Shu are in trouble, they fell in. Mingyao was feeling uneasy, but the calm look on Lin Yi's face gave her confidence in Lin E. She was sure that Lin E would be fine. Although Lin E looked like a cheeky guy, he was able to solve every crisis easily. For example, the robbery at the bank, or the chandelier incident at the underground parking lot of Pengjian Tower. He was always able to find and solve the crisis easily. So since Lin E knew about the danger beforehand, he wouldn't take the risk knowing that it was dangerous. There was only one reason for him to do so, and that was because he had absolute confidence. What? Lin E and Shu fell in? Faubert was shocked and his tone changed. Although he was worried that Mingyao would be the one who fell in, he couldn't let it be Lin E and Shu. Faubert, where are you? There are a lot of people here, and I can't tell you in detail, but I think they're fine. Mingyao had regained her usual calmness. As a rich girl, she wasn't just a materialistic person. With her brain and IQ, it was easy for her to figure out the crux of the problem. Lin E wasn't an idiot, and he wouldn't do anything rash. Lin E wasn't someone who liked to drag others into trouble, either. It could be seen from how he took a bullet for a girl he didn't know in the bank robbery case. So he brought Shu with him. He wouldn't drag Shu into this. She didn't know when it started, but Lin E had become omnipotent in Mingyao's heart. It was an inexplicable sense of trust. Mingyao didn't want to admit it, but the truth was the truth. I see you, Miss Chu. Faubert's voice came from behind Mingyao, and he hung up. In front of the bungee jumping valley, Faubert's Bentley was parked. This car belonged to the chairman of Pengjian Industries, and all the staff here recognized it. This car could be parked anywhere in the park. Li Fu fell into deep thought after listening to Mingyao's narration. The tension he felt earlier had loosened up quite a bit. If what Mingyao said was true, and Lin E jumped down knowing that it was dangerous, then he was either an idiot, or he was completely confident that he would be fine. Obviously Lin E wasn't an idiot. Even if Faubert had told Lin E not to alert the enemy, there was no need for Lin E to jump into danger. But Faubert couldn't understand why Lin E would do something like that. He reported it to Pengjian as soon as possible. Pengjian was stunned when he received Faubert's message. Then he started laughing. Mingyao heard the laughter on the phone. She frowned and grabbed Faubert's phone, unhappy. Daddy, Shu and Lin E are in trouble. Why are you laughing? I'm laughing, of course I'm laughing. The problem that's been bothering me for so many days has finally been solved. Pengjian laughed. I didn't think that Mr. Lin would give me such a big gift. Daddy, what are you talking about? What big gift? What do you mean? Mingyao didn't know what Lin E was talking about. Haha, Yao Yao, give the phone to Faubert. I'll talk to him, and let Faubert explain it to you. Pengzhan was in a good mood. Not only was he not affected by Lin Yi and Yushu's situation, but he was actually very happy. Meng Yao handed the phone back to Faubert, who took it. Mr. Chu. Li Fu, I didn't think that Lin Yi would do something like this. Our problem has been solved, Pengzhan said with a smile. Oh, Mr. Chu, you mean? Faubert's eyes lit up. He was an old friend of Pengzhan's, and he understood what Pengzhan was trying to say. That's right. Inform the shareholders that we'll have a shareholders meeting tomorrow, Sunday at 8. Pengzhan was really impressed with Lin Yi. What a beautiful move. Pengzhan had been trying to gather power in the company a couple of times, but the results weren't very good. After all, he was the chairman, but there were still other shareholders. Even if he wanted to gather power, he'd have to ask them first, right? Chapter 272. Before his death, yet Gubang's accounts had always been flawless, and Pengzhan hadn't been able to do anything about it even after a couple of investigations. Pengzhan wanted to go all out with Gubang right away, but he didn't have the guts to do so. Gubang's power in the company was too great, and if he was forced into a corner, it wasn't impossible for him to contact the other shareholders in secret to go against the chairman. That was why Pengzhan had told Lin Yi to observe the situation and act as if he didn't know about Gubang's scheme. But Lin Yi had played along and blown things up. The theme park was one of the businesses Gubang was in charge of, and logically speaking, an accident at the theme park could be a big deal. But this was exactly what Pengzhan had been waiting for all this time. The one in trouble was Yushu, the treasurer of House Chun. An accident had happened at the theme park Gubang was in charge of, and Pengzhan believed that no one would object if he were to use this incident to weaken Gubang's authority in the board of directors. It was a small matter, but it wasn't a small matter when it involved House Chun. The shareholders all knew how powerful House Chun was, and if they were to find out that something had happened to Yushu, and that the board of directors hadn't dealt with the person responsible, things would get out of hand. As a result, no one would stand up for Gubang. It was his fault for being in charge of the theme park. Whether or not he was responsible, he was still the person in charge. Gubang's power had been reduced, and he couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi's move was quite a beautiful one too, making it so that Gubang didn't know that Lin Yi had seen through their plan. With that kind of wishful thinking, Gubang wouldn't go all out against Lin Yi, since he was still fantasizing about making a move on Meng Yao again. This time, he could use this incident to take back all the entertainment businesses Gubang was in charge of. The company's hotels, nightclubs, karaoke, amusement parks, and carnivals were all cash cows. Who knew how much money Gubang had embezzled from them all these years? The first step was to take back control of these businesses, and the next step would be much easier to check on. Slowly boiling the frog, Pengzhan wanted to make Gubang lose his power bit by bit, leaving him a sliver of hope every time he attacked him. That was the only way to get rid of this scum, without hurting the company's profits. Faubert explained Pengzhan's intentions to Meng Yao, and while Meng Yao didn't know much about company politics, Faubert's explanation was very simple. Lin Yi had done his daddy a huge favor this time. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had no idea how excited Pengzhan was. He just thought that it was just a random thought, thinking that the theme park incident might bring some benefits to Pengzhan. But he didn't know that Pengzhan had a plan in place. The rope snapped the second time, and Lin Yi and Yushu fell straight into the rushing water. Yushu finally dared to open her eyes. She wanted to experience the feeling of bungee jumping, only to see the rope snap and her head getting closer and closer to the water. Ah! Shield bro! Yushu didn't expect the rope to snap like this. Wouldn't it be over if they fell? Yushu's 18 years of life flashed through her mind like a movie, as she watched herself plunge headfirst into the water. Was she going to die? Yushu felt the threat of death looming over her as she hugged Lin Yi tightly. Shield bro, I don't want to die. I haven't lived enough yet. I haven't been in a relationship. I haven't had a boyfriend. I haven't had a kiss. Lin Yi was speechless. There was no way she could die with him here. With a splash, the two fell into the seawater. Yushu was still yelling, and didn't react in time. and the seawater went into her mouth. Glug glug. Bubbles started coming out of her mouth. Lenny wanted to cover Yushu's mouth with his hand, so that she'd stop moaning. She'd really choke to death if she did that. But Yushu's arms were wrapped around him like an octopus, and he couldn't move at all. In a moment of desperation, Lenny kissed Yushu fiercely, blocking her mouth to stop the seawater from pouring in. Yushu was still in a daze, so she didn't feel anything when the seawater poured into her mouth. But she did when Lenny kissed her. She opened her eyes wide, trying to look at Lenny, but she couldn't open her eyes in the water. Oh! Did this count as Shield Bro fulfilling her wish before she died? She'd just said that she'd never been in a relationship, that she didn't have a boyfriend, that she'd die without a kiss. And now, Shield Bro was kissing her. Yushu felt her cheeks heating up. Was Shield Bro her boyfriend? Probably, since they'd confessed to each other. Yushu comforted herself. If that was the case, then so be it. Dying together with Shield Bro wasn't something she'd lived in vain. Lenny wanted to break free from Yushu's arms, but the current was a little strong, and the two of them were tied together by the waist and feet. Yushu was hanging from his body as well, and Lenny couldn't swim at all. In just a short while, the seawater had washed the two of them far away. Lenny finally broke the surface with Yushu in his arms, and saw that there was no end in sight. Phew. Lenny moved his hands away from Yushu's mouth, and took a deep breath. Fortunately, Lenny could hold his breath underwater for a long time, or he'd be dead already. Yushu, on the other hand, had already fainted in his arms. Lenny reached for his shoe and pulled out a blade, cutting the rope around their ankles. Lenny didn't touch the rope around their waists, leaving Yushu tied to his body. It'd be safer for him to carry her. The blade in his shoe was Lin Yi's ace in the hole. He'd used it on two of Tsihua's golden class masters earlier, and he didn't expect to use it again so soon. He put the blade back in his shoe, and Lenny narrowed his eyes as he looked at the sun in the sky, trying to figure out where he was. After a while, Lenny took a deep breath and swam to his left with Yushu. Swimming with another person was a very taxing task, but after practicing the art of dragon mastery, he didn't feel tired at all. He only needed to chant the incantation once, and his spirit would be refreshed again. Chapter 273. Shark. Kill the fish. What reassured Lin Yi, however, was the fact that the jade on him hadn't given him any warnings since the rope broke. In other words, there wasn't any danger at all. It seemed that he'd gotten rid of most of Tsihua's practitioners as well. The two golden class masters were dead, and Tsihua really couldn't send out any more. He'd sent someone like Ma, who'd tried to scare people with a trick like breaking a rope to kill him, or Ming Yao. Naturally, Lenny wouldn't let his guard down even if that was the case. Tsihua had said that he wasn't alone, that he was just a representative in Songshan. He had a boss behind him. Finally, Lenny could see the coastline, but Lenny didn't know how far it was from Songshan. Lenny didn't have a GPS with him, so he could only estimate his position based on the direction of the sun. Lenny smiled bitterly, not expecting to be washed this far into the water. He wouldn't have been washed this far if Yushu hadn't choked on the water, and he'd had to deal with her. Shark. Lenny narrowed his eyes. There was a shark closing in on him not too far away. Lenny frowned. Normally, sharks wouldn't attack humans unless they were attacked or attracted by blood, since human flesh wasn't that tasty to sharks. Sharks would usually ignore humans if they weren't starving or stimulated by blood. Of course, this was only under normal situations. There were a few exceptions to the rule, such as sharks that swam around in shallow waters, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Lenny couldn't tell if this shark had any intentions of attacking him yet, but Lenny maintained his speed as he swam towards the shore. If the shark was full, then it wouldn't attack him. It would swim away from him. There was no point in waiting for Lin Yi if it were to attack him. He'd deal with the situation as it came, and Lenny didn't think much of a shark. The dagger in his shoe appeared in Lin Yi's hand once more as he swam through the water. Unfortunately for him, the shark seemed to have made Lin Yi its target. It swam towards Lin Yi as if it had smelled its prey. Lin Yi wasn't as fast as a shark, no matter how strong he was. Lin Yi didn't slow down as he calculated the distance between him and the shark. He only stopped when he was a few hundred meters away. The shark was only a few dozen meters away from him. As the overlord of the sea, the shark obviously didn't put Lin Yi in its eyes. In its eyes, Lin Yi had become its prey. Waves were getting stronger and stronger, rising and falling from behind Lin Yi. The shark was getting closer and closer to Lin Yi. This great white shark that was as big as a car opened its bloody mouth, ready to launch the first round of attacks on Lin Yi. Lin Yi's left hand subconsciously pulled Yushu, telling her not to get out of his control. In fact, Yushu's limbs had been tightly wrapped around Lin Yi's body, and Lin Yi just wanted to make sure that he could deal with the shark in peace. With the blade in his right hand, and his left hand clenched into a fist, Lin Yi's eyes were fixed on the great white shark. Fu dash, a wave surged, and the shark rushed towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't dodge, but floated in the water without moving, waiting for the shark to attack. The shark probably didn't expect its prey to stop moving. This kind of situation rarely happened. The prey's first reaction after being targeted was to run, but Lin Yi stopped, and this made the shark a little hesitant. The shark's intelligence was relatively high in the sea, and when it encountered something unusual, it naturally wouldn't attack blindly. After seeing that Lin Yi stopped moving, the shark also slowed down, but it didn't seem to care about Lin Yi, a creature that was much smaller than it, in its eyes. Although it slowed down the speed of approaching Lin Yi, it didn't give up the intention to attack Lin Yi, but its speed was a little slower. In an instant, the shark suddenly rushed towards Lin Yi. Perhaps it had lost its patience, but at this moment, Lin Yi also made his move, swinging his left fist at the shark's nose. This was one of the most vulnerable parts of the shark's body, and Lin Yi knew this weakness like the back of his hand. Peng dash, with Lin Yi's strength, if this punch hit a person, it might be able to kill a normal person. Although it couldn't kill the shark, it was enough to make the shark's head tilt to the side. The shark was in pain, but this aroused its blood even more. Its cheeks turned, and it opened its mouth to bite Lin Yi. But unfortunately, Lin Yi didn't give it this opportunity. He inserted a knife into the shark's gills, cut up and down a few times inside, and then quickly swam to the side. The shark struggled in the water a few times, and then it stopped moving. It slowly floated on the surface of the sea, losing its former majesty. The gills were one of the fatal parts of the shark, and Lin Yi was already familiar with it. This shark was killed by Lin Yi, and Lin Yi naturally wouldn't waste it. Who knew where he would land in a while? Shark meat wasn't too tasty, but it was more than enough to fill his stomach in case he got hungry. This was survival in the wild. Lin Yi untied the rope from his leg and put it on the shark's tail, dragging it towards the shore. He didn't feel anything at all, even though it was a weight of this magnitude. Lin Yi could swim in the water even when his hands and feet were tied with iron during training. Lin Yi climbed up the shore and threw the shark to the side. His priority was to wake Yushu up first. But Lin Yi hesitated about saving Yushu. According to the standard rescue procedure, he needed to do CPR right now. But this seemed to be taking advantage of Yushu. After all, Lin Yi didn't need CPR when saving people. But Lin Yi couldn't resist Yushu's seduction. Lin Yi had quite a good impression of Yushu, at least a little more than Meng Yao. The girl was cute, and it was easy to like her. But taking advantage of Yushu, while she was unconscious, Lin Yi couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't have a choice in the sea before, but there was another way now. Chapter 274. The feeling of happiness. It wasn't like he was forcing her, but Lin Yi wanted Yushu to close her eyes and whisper to him in a cute voice, "Shield bro, kiss me." Just thinking about it made his blood boil. And so Lin Yi didn't want to take advantage of the situation. It was the same reason Lin Yi wanted to see what was going on in Yushu and Mingyao's room. But he didn't do it. He placed Yushu on his thighs and pushed her down, massaging a few acupoints on her back. Even so, Yushu's soft body was enough to make Lin Yi's imagination run wild. Wah! Yushu spat out all the seawater she'd swallowed earlier under Lin Yi's massage. She started coughing as Lin Yi patted her back gently until her breathing returned to normal. Shield bro. I'm not dead? Yushu raised her head, looking at Lin Yi, a little surprised. Or are we dead, and this is heaven? You're not dead, but this isn't heaven. Lin Yi said, finding it funny. Yushu lying on top of him was very comfortable, but Lin Yi didn't want to take advantage of her. Yushu wasn't his girlfriend after all. Lin Yi wouldn't hold back if it had been Tang Yun. Oh, I'm not dead? So you're the one who saved me? Yushu was very excited at Lin Yi's words as she climbed up from Lin Yi's body. She wanted to dance, but her body was too weak from all that torment. She stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Ah! Yushu cried out as she held on to Lin Yi. Shield bro, are we really not dead? Nope, I'm here. How could you die that easily? Lin Yi rolled his eyes. Wasn't it too easy to die? Lin Yi would have killed himself if falling into the sea could kill someone. Hee, I knew Shield bro's the best. Yushu felt that it was great to be alive. Shield bro, did you kiss me earlier? That wasn't a kiss. I was just blocking your mouth. You'd choke to death otherwise. Lin Yi tried to justify his actions. In actuality, it was just a different name, and the nature of the kiss was the same. Oh, then did you give me CPR when you saved me? Yushu's face was a little red as she spoke. I heard that CPR requires mouth-to-mouth, and you have to press on someone's chest as well. Did you take advantage of me? Didn't you see how you looked when you woke up? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. I don't need CPR to save people. Oh, Yushu didn't think that Lin Yi would lie to her, but she did feel a little disappointed. Shield bro could have taken advantage of her, so why didn't he? Shield bro doesn't like me? My phone is broken. Check to see if yours is broken. Then call Faubert to let him know you're safe. Lin Yi fiddled with his phone a few times, and then regretfully put it away. He could no longer turn it on. After being submerged in seawater for so long, most electronic products would be ruined. Mine? I didn't bring my phone. I gave it to Yao Yao before I bungee jumped. Yushu said. Who cares, it's fine as long as we're alive. Shield bro, I'm a little hungry. Is there anything to eat? Lin Yi really didn't know what to say. He was starting to understand Mingyao's pain a little. This bestie of hers was simply too supportive, and not just a little supportive. But Lin Yi didn't say anything. Yushu and Mingyao hadn't eaten anything yet, and after all that, they'd vomited out the last bit of stomach acid they had. How could they not be hungry? Yushu looked left and right, but regretfully realized that there was no one here. It was a barren land. This was a danger zone, and sharks often appeared here. It wasn't developed into a tourist spot, so it was normal for there to be no one here. But Yushu's eyes stopped at the shark on the beach. Shield bro, what's that? Dead fish. Shark. Lin Yi said faintly. Shark. Yushu shrank her head subconsciously. She wanted to go check it out, but she didn't dare. Shield bro, there's a shark here? Yeah, it almost ate you. Lin Yi smiled. But I killed it. Shield bro, you killed a shark? Oh really? You're so cool. Yushu didn't expect Lin Yi to drag her to the shore and kill a shark as well. He was so strong. There's nothing to eat here, but there's a shark. If you want to eat it, I'll roast it. Lin Yi had seen a forest not far from the beach, and he'd probably be able to pick up some dry branches there. It'd be perfect for roasting fish. Shark. Sure, Shield bro. I've never eaten shark before. Yushu was very excited at the thought. What does shark meat taste like? Is it good? Honestly, it's not that good. Lin Yi had eaten shark before, and he didn't think it was very tasty. Otherwise, people wouldn't just cut off the fins and throw the meat back into the sea. I see. It's fine, I'm not picky. I can eat anything. Yushu was satisfied as long as there was food to eat. Her stomach was completely emptied. Lin Yi nodded and prepared to pick up some dry branches. He turned back after 2 steps. Don't walk around, and don't go into the sea. If there was a shark here, there'd be a school of them. Lin Yi didn't want Yushu to be a pile of bones when he came back. I know, I'll wait for you here. Yushu hugged her legs as she sat on the beach, smiling at Lin Yi. Don't worry, Shield bro, I'll be a good girl. Yushu suddenly felt like she was playing house when she was young, like a wife sending her husband off, listening to his instructions and waiting for him to come back at night. A feeling of happiness that she'd never felt before rose in Yushu's heart. It was a little sweet, but also a little shy. She looked at Lin Yi's silhouette. He wasn't all that majestic, and he looked a little frail, but Yushu felt very comfortable. It was a sense of security. It'd be interesting if she stayed here with Shield Bro, wouldn't it? Yushu thought. But that wasn't realistic. Yao Yao seemed to like Shield Bro too. Yushu sighed softly. Chapter 275. Chapter 275. Lenny, and the caveman. Yushu shook her head as she stood up, not wanting to think about all that nonsense anymore. You're back, Shield Bro. Do you need my help? Yushu didn't want to be a parasite that only knew how to eat. She wouldn't just stand by and watch if she could help. Look around the beach and see if there's any glass bottles or something like that. Thin wire works too if there's none. Lenny said as he tossed the branch onto the sand. Oh, why do you need a bottle and wire? Yushu asked, confused. The bottom of the bottle can be used as a magnifying glass to start a fire, and the wire can be used to hang the fish. Lenny explained as he went to clean up the shark. Yushu nodded. She'd learned all of this in physics class before, but she'd never thought about putting it to use. Still, Yushu asked, can't we start a fire by drilling wood? Yeah, but it's a pain in the ass. Lenny said as he tossed the shark aside and started cleaning its innards. Yushu walked around the beach, not daring to go too far. She didn't find any glass bottles, but only a couple of rusted wires. She didn't know which fishing boat it was from, but it had washed up here. Shield Bro, looks like you really need to start a fire by drilling wood, Yushu said as she handed the wires to Lin Yi. Ah. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Alright, I'll spin the sticks quickly later, and you can help me blow at them. Oh, okay. Yushu nodded. Drilling wood to start a fire was something she'd learned in history class before, and she remembered the general process. The branches were too brittle, probably because it hadn't rained in a long time. They couldn't take too much force, and Lin Yi found 2 of them, breaking them with a little force. Lin Yi, you think it's fun to start a fire this way? Jiao Lao's voice sounded beside Lin Yi's ear all of a sudden. Jiao Lao. Lin Yi blinked, a bitter smile on his face. How am I supposed to start a fire if I don't do that? When you drill wood, just chant the first stage of the art of dragon mastery, and the energy in your body will be transferred to the wood in your hand. Jiao Lao said. That works. Lin Yi was a little taken aback, not expecting that energy in his body could do something like that. I've already told you, as long as you're in contact with something that needs energy, you'll transfer the energy from your body to it. Elder Jiao explained. Ugh, I know that, but what I'm trying to say is you can do that? Lin Yi was still in disbelief. Don't you know about the law of conservation of energy? Energy can change from one form to another, and the energy in your body is omnipotent and pure. It can be changed into the energy of anything in the world. Jiao Lao said with disdain. Lin Yi was speechless at Lin Yi's ignorance. Ha! Lin Yi didn't expect the energy in his body to be so useful. Can I use it to replace gasoline when the car runs out of gas? Nope. Jiao Lao poured a bucket of cold water on Lin Yi's head. The energy in your body can indeed be changed into the kinetic energy of the engine, but it can't be changed into gasoline. If you have the ability to connect your hand to the engine while the car is moving, you might be able to do that. Ugh! Lin Yi was speechless. It seemed like he was thinking too much. Still, the information Lin Yi had was enough to make him happy. According to what Jiao Lao said, Lin Yi channeled the art of dragon mastery and transferred the energy in his body to the wood through his hands. Phew! The branch in Lin Yi's hand caught fire all of a sudden, scaring Yushu, who was blowing at it. She almost burned her hair. Ah, that scared the hell out of me. Yushu quickly dodged to the side, patting her chest. Shield Bro, that scared the hell out of me. How did the fire start all of a sudden? There's no warning at all. What kind of warning could there be? Lin Yi himself was shocked as well. This fast? In fact, it was this fast. I've read in the history books that primitive people used to drill wood to start a fire. They'd smoke first, and then the fire would start slowly. I didn't know it was this fast. Yushu wiped the cold sweat off her forehead. But maybe it's because you're too strong, shield bro. You're even stronger than the primitive people. Lenny wanted to ask, was that a compliment? This comparison really left one speechless. You add firewood, I'll go get the shark. Lenny left things here to Yushu, and walked over to the shark. He used a knife to cut the shark meat into small pieces, and soaked them in the seawater. The goal was to wash off the mud and sand, and let the seawater seep in as well. That way, the meat would have some flavor to it, and wouldn't be completely tasteless. After washing it, Lenny threaded the meat through the wire Yushu brought back, and walked back to Yushu's side. Shield bro, what are we doing now? I'm done. Lenny handed the skewer of fish to Yushu. Hold it for me for a while. Lenny found 2 of the longest twigs in the pile behind him, and stuck them into the sand next to the fire, hanging the skewer in Yushu's hands. It'll be ready in a while, but don't eat too much, there's no water. It didn't take long for the meat to be cooked, and Yushu couldn't help but gulp. Shield bro, is it ready? Yeah, it's fine if it's a little raw, it'll just cause diarrhea. Lenny said as he flipped the shark meat over with the twigs. Let's wait a while then. Yushu's face paled at the mention of diarrhea. There was no toilet here, and there was no toilet paper. Wouldn't shield bro see her if she did that? Wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Huh? Lenny smiled as he took the wire down. It's ready now. You eat the middle one, it's cooked. Oh. Yushu picked up a piece of shark meat with a branch, and pulled it off the wire, impatiently putting it to her mouth. She took a small bite and swallowed it whole. The shark's bones were bigger than the rest, and he'd already removed them from the meat. She didn't have to worry about the bones getting stuck in the meat. Chapter 276. More than good? You're hungry, aren't you? Lenny said with a smile. Shark Fin wasn't a poor person. Who'd have the stomach to eat meat when faced with delicacies every day? Yushu, on the other hand, only thought that it was delicious because she was starving. Shark meat wasn't as tender as the carp and crucian carp on the dining table after all. A lot of fishermen would just cut off the fins after catching a shark, and throw it back into the sea. It was a little cruel, but it also proved that shark meat wasn't good to eat. Many of the cheapest fish balls on the market were made from shark meat because of the low cost. But Lenny wasn't in the mood to eat shark fins. He'd rather have some meat instead. Yushu was a smaller eater, and as delicious as the shark meat was, she couldn't eat any more after 2 pieces. She sat on the side, clutching her stomach. I'm so full, but it's so good. Shield bro, let's take the rest of the shark meat home. Let Yao Yao have a taste. Yushu didn't forget about Meng Yao at all, not forgetting about the good stuff. It was obvious that the two were close, despite their constant bickering. We'll have to get in touch with Faubert first, Lenny said as he took out his phone's battery and put it on the sand. When the water on the phone's motherboard evaporated, before it was corroded by the rust, the phone could be used for a short period of time. Once the motherboard was completely corroded by the rust, the phone would be finished. This was something a friend of Lin Yi's told him a long time ago, and Lenny decided to give it a try. Someone had gotten into an accident at the theme park's bungee jumping valley. It wasn't a serious case, and it wasn't under the jurisdiction of the criminal police. But Yushu was involved, and even the director had given the order. Lingshan had no choice but to come to the theme park herself to investigate the incident. She called the marine police for backup as she searched for witnesses, searching the waters nearby. To be honest, even a swimmer wouldn't have much of a chance of survival if they fell in with ropes tied around their waist and feet. How were they supposed to swim when their entire body was tied up? Lingshan paused when she heard that Lin Yi was there as well. That man was there too? Lingshan didn't have a very good impression of him, but the man did help her out twice, once with the bank robbers, and once with Heibao. Both times were huge contributions, and since Lin Yi didn't want them, the credit naturally went to Lingshan. It gave Lingshan an indescribably weird feeling towards Lin Yi. She wasn't really grateful, but she didn't want anything to happen to Lin Yi. Captain Song. The coast police replied that there's no one within a kilometer radius. Should we expand the search area? Or? The one speaking was the captain of the first squad, Lu Wangli. Lingshan was the one who'd brought them here today. I'll ask for instructions. Lingshan sighed. If there weren't two people within a kilometer radius, then either they'd been washed away, or they'd sunk to the bottom of the sea. Expanding the search area probably wouldn't help anymore. It'd be pointless if they kept searching. Director Chen's phone was busy, and it seemed like he was under a lot of pressure as well. The person who'd fallen in was Yushu, House Chen's precious granddaughter. One could only imagine the consequences if she were to die like this. Lingshan dialed Huaijuan's number. Huaijuan had been promoted to the vice director position and was in charge of the criminal and economic teams. Other than Director Chen, Huaijuan was Lingshan's direct superior. What's wrong, Song? What's up? I'm having a meeting in the province, Huaijuan said after getting the call. You're not at the police station? Lingshan blinked, not expecting Huaijuan to be absent today. You still don't know about the theme park? What happened at the theme park? Huaijuan really didn't know what happened at the theme park. His phone was turned off during the meeting, and now that he was taking a break from the meeting, he turned it on to see if there were any urgent messages from his subordinates. Lingshan called him not long after. Yushu and your friend Lin Yi were bungee jumping when the rope snapped, and the two fell into the sea. Lingshan reported. I've contacted the marine police to help search a kilometer out, but they didn't find the two. The marine police asked if we should expand the search area, but I personally think that the two were tied together and fell into the sea. Even if they know how to swim, they're probably dead. The odds are against him. Huaijuan repeated the 4 words oddly, not knowing what to say. He found it hilarious and didn't know what to say. Huaijuan's heart skipped a beat when he heard Yushu's name. It wouldn't be a small matter if something happened to Yutian's sister. But when he heard that Yushu fell into the sea with Lin Yi, he calmed down. Even he wouldn't die in a situation like this, much less Lin Yi. With Lin Yi there, Yushu would be safe for sure. Lingshan, on the other hand, was thinking too much. Yes, if we can't find them within a kilometer, then they're either washed away by the waves, or they've sunk to the bottom of the sea. Lingshan said, no matter which one it is, there's no hope of survival. Song, you can call the marine police back, Huaijuan said. Oh, you're saying that we're giving up on the search? Lingshan was thinking the same thing, but this was related to Yushu, and it was quite a headache for her. She didn't have a good impression of Yushu's brother, but work and life were two different things. Give up? Who said we're giving up? Huaijuan smiled. But Captain Yang, didn't you tell the marine police to call them back? Lingshan blinked. Calling them back doesn't mean we're giving up on the search, Huaijuan said. I didn't tell you to call them back. But Lingshan didn't understand. How are we supposed to search if the marine police can't find them? Who told you to search in the sea? Get your people to look for a speedboat and search along the coastline. Maybe you'll find them, Huaijuan said as he pointed out a shortcut. Chapter 277. Still alive, you'll see, Huaijuan said with a smile. All right, Song. I'm going to a meeting now, so my phone's off. I'll call you later. Oh, okay. Lingshan didn't know what Huaijuan was talking about, but since he'd said so, she'd do as he said. She told the marine police to retreat and borrowed a speedboat from Wang Li's men to start searching along the coastline. Captain Song, we're searching here. The body shouldn't be floating here that fast, right? Wang Li didn't understand. It's Captain Yang's orders. Just keep your eyes open. Lingshan didn't explain much, since she didn't quite understand what Huaijuan was suggesting. But Lingshan respected Huaijuan the most in the police department. She'd follow his orders to the letter. Wang Li shut his mouth immediately upon hearing that it was the orders of the old captain and the current vice director Yang. He, like Lingshan, admired Huaijuan from the bottom of his heart. There had to be a reason why Huaijuan wanted them to do this. Yushu sat on the beach, playing with the sand. She made a bunker out of the sand and dug a trap, having the time of her life. Lin Yi smiled as he looked at the playful Yushu. Only Yushu would be in the mood to play with sand at a time like this. Lin Yi picked it up after looking at the phone on the beach, plugged in the battery, and turned it on. As expected, the phone turned on. It seemed that his friend had a point after all. Linny dialed Huijuan's number, but the phone was turned off. After some hesitation, Linny dialed Lingshan's number. Her phone rang, and Lingshan took it out. She thought it was Director Chen, but her eyes widened when she saw the name on the screen. What the hell? The caller ID on the phone was actually Lin Yi's name. Didn't he drown? Wang Li was a little surprised. He didn't know why Lingshan wasn't picking up the call. Captain Song, what's wrong? Oh, it's nothing. Lingshan came back to her senses and quickly answered the phone. She was a police. She didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. Hello? Lin Yi. Lin Yi waited impatiently for a long time, cursing the tigress in his heart for not picking up his phone. Who knew how long his phone would last? Lingshan, get someone to look into my phone's signal, and tell Faubert to come get me. I won't say anything else. I'll talk about it when I get back. Lin Yi said and hung up the phone. Lin Yi didn't know that Lingshan was searching for him as well. He thought that she would ask him all sorts of questions, but Lin Yi didn't even dare use his phone right now. Who knew if it would shut down if he talked too much? Lin Yi had a GPS app in his phone, but Lin Yi couldn't guarantee that his phone wouldn't crash after he pulled it out. Who knew what would happen to a phone that had been soaked in water? He's not dead. Lingshan looked at her phone in disbelief, but Lin Yi did call, and he even asked her to look into his location. Lingshan was now sure that Lin Yi was out of danger, but she didn't know where he was. What do you mean not dead? Wang Li was a little puzzled. What was the captain talking about? Lu Wangli, call the tech department. Tell them to look into 152XXXX1234's location and report back to me. Lingshan said. Yes. Lu Wangli didn't get a reply from Lingshan, but that wasn't important. Since Lingshan had given him an order, naturally, he wouldn't dare delay and carry it out immediately. Soon, the coordinates of Lin Yi's phone were sent back to Lingshan, and she keyed in the coordinates into the GPS. She was surprised to find that Lin Yi was on a coastline 2 kilometers behind her. Lin Yi really was on the coastline, and Huijuan was right. Lingshan finally understood what Huijuan was saying. Huijuan was sure that Lin Yi wouldn't die, and that he would definitely swim to the coast. Lingshan frowned. It seemed like this Lin Yi kid did have some ability. Lingshan wasn't happy about it, but she had to admit it. Lin Yi seemed to be stronger than her, just a little. Of course, Lingshan wasn't going to lose in terms of skills. After getting Lin Yi's coordinates, Lingshan called Lin Yi back impatiently, wanting to make sure that Yushu was fine. Lin Yi's phone rang twice, however, and was mysteriously hung up. Lingshan tried calling again, only to hear that the phone had been turned off. Lingshan was a little annoyed and helpless. Why didn't he pick up? However, she also knew that Lin Yi's phone might have run out of battery, or else he wouldn't have called her in such a hurry. He'd hung up after giving her a vague explanation. He was out of danger now, and he should have time to talk. Lingshan was pretty much right, but it wasn't that the phone was out of battery, but that it was completely broken. Lin Yi was just about to pick up when he realized that the phone was dead, and he couldn't turn it off even if he wanted to turn it off. He could only remove the battery, but it couldn't be turned back on. He didn't know if that tigress Lingshan had gone to look for his location. Lin Yi shook his head with a bitter smile, hoping that tigress had some brains. The reason why Lin Yi didn't call Faubert, and chose to call Huijuan and Lingshan first, was because he was afraid that his phone wouldn't last long. If he called Faubert, Faubert would have to contact the police to lock the phone's signal. Lin Yi wasn't sure if his phone would last that long, so he decided to call Lingshan instead. When Lin Yi saw a motorboat coming their way, Lin Yi knew that Lingshan wasn't that bad after all. Shoo, someone's here to pick us up. We can go home now. Lin Yi called out to Yushu, who was playing with the sand. In fact, Lin Yi wasn't worried at all. Even if his phone was broken, it would only be a matter of time before they were found. Huijuan would be able to tell that he wasn't dead when he found out that he fell into the sea with Yushu. Oh, shield bro. It wasn't easy for me to build a castle out of sand, Yushu said, a little reluctant. I'll use someone else's phone to take a picture for you, Lin Yi said with a smile. Chapter 278. Shield bro is mighty. Lingshan had wanted to say a few words of consolation. She wasn't on good terms with Yushu's brother, but that was a personal thing. She couldn't mix it with work. Yushu was a victim, after all, and it made sense to comfort her after being rescued by the police. Lingshan swallowed the words she was about to say when she saw the castles piled up on the beach. She didn't need any consolation after having so much fun. What Yushu said next, however, made her even more speechless. Lingshan sis, you're so fast. I haven't even finished building my castle yet. Yushu said as she walked over reluctantly, as she looked at her masterpiece. Lingshan wanted to yell at her, but she held it in. She knew that Yushu was doing this on purpose, just by looking at those little eyes of hers. This girl had never liked her since she was young. Wasn't it because she'd rejected her brother's advances? Couldn't she just reject him if she didn't like him? Lingshan felt a headache coming on. Little girls were really hard to read. She didn't have to look for her brother for a boyfriend, did she? Plus, it was a fact that she couldn't beat her in a fight. So why would she look for a guy weaker than her? Was she supposed to protect him? Or was he supposed to protect her in the future? Give me your phone. Lingshan was just getting annoyed when Linny asked for her phone. What for? Lingshan paused, but still handed the phone over to Linny. She'd tried calling him earlier, but his phone was turned off. She subconsciously assumed that his phone was out of battery, and she was borrowing it to make a call. But he didn't make a call after taking the phone. Instead, he turned on the camera function and started taking pictures of Yushu's sand castle. Left, right, all angles, he didn't miss anything. Wow, Shield bro, you're so nice. I can keep this as a souvenir, Yushu said excitedly as she ran over to the castle. Shield bro, take a picture with us. Why are you taking pictures of this? Lingshan wasn't expecting Lin Yi to use her phone for something like this. She was furious. Linny, do you have nothing better to do? Send the pictures to me when you get back, or send it to my mailbox. Linny didn't answer her question, as he handed the phone back to her. No time. Lingshan was about to explode it. Taking pictures of Yushu with her phone was one thing. But taking pictures of a bunch of castles? If she cooperated with him, and sent the photo over, what would happen to her? Lingshan had always had a strong image in the courtyard, acting like a proud princess no matter who she was facing. Yushu never got along with her because of Yutian, so why would Lingshan send her a photo? If he did, where would his face be? No time, right? Alright, next time you come looking for me, you'll have to think about whether or not I have the time. Linny shrugged nonchalantly, turning around to leave. Lingshan gritted her teeth and stomped her feet on the sand, spitting out 2 words. I'll be rich. Ha! Linny smiled. He knew this tigress would give in. Yushu, on the other hand, had her eyes wide open as she looked at Lin Yi and Lingshan in disbelief. Yushu had asked Lin Yi to take a photo with the sand castle just to piss off Lingshan. As far as she was concerned, with Lingshan's temper, there was no way she'd send the photo to her. Even if Yushu were to ask about it, Lingshan would only say that she'd accidentally deleted it. So when Linny asked Lingshan to send the photo, Lingshan saying, no time, was within Yushu's expectations. Yushu didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. Linny had used Lingshan's phone to take a photo of her and the sand castle, and that was already very impressive. Who would dare use her phone to do something so senseless? Even his big brother, Yutian, wouldn't dare do something like that. From a certain point of view, Shield Bro was very powerful. He took Lingshan's phone and took some senseless pictures. And Lingshan didn't beat him up. Only saying that she didn't have time was already giving him a lot of face. Just when Yushu was about to praise Shield Bro for being so powerful, something unexpected happened. Lingshan actually agreed to send the photo, all because of one sentence from Shield Bro. Shield Bro, you're too amazing. Yushu really wanted to hug and kiss Linny. All the pent-up anger she'd been suppressing for so many years was finally vented. She'd thought that no man could handle Lingshan. But Shield Bro did it so easily. The rumors about Lingshan doing that thing to Lin Yi in the hospital. Could it be true? Yes, it seemed very possible now. Why else would Lingshan be so obedient? Geez, bro, looks like you'll have to give up. But it doesn't seem like you can handle her. Might as well give her to Shield Bro. Yes, if Uncle Chu really is looking for a son-in-law, then Yao Yao will be Shield Bro's main wife. And I'll be Shield Bro's second wife. And Lingshan can only be a maid. Lingshan was so angry that she almost turned into a frog. Of course, she knew what Yushu was happy about, but there was nothing she could do about it. Lingshan didn't dare offend Lin Yi too much. She couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't ask him for help if she had any problems in the future. Thinking about it, she could only endure it. Hey Tigress, come help move the shark. Lin Yi said casually. Tigress? Tigress. Lingshan thought that her ears were messed up. Someone actually dared to call her Tigress? Wah! Yushu froze as well. That Shield Bro was a little too much. Lu Wangli stood at the side, wanting to laugh but not daring to. He gave Lin Yi a thumbs up in his heart, wondering what was the relationship between Lin Yi and Captain Song. Not only did he take Captain Song's phone and take a bunch of random sand castles, he even dared to call Captain Song Tigress. Lin Yi, what did you call me? Lingshan grabbed at Lin Yi, no longer able to hold back her anger. She just wanted to teach him a lesson. This guy was too much. Did he really think that she wouldn't be able to solve the case without him just because he had some skills? She was the champion fighter in the police station. How could she let Lin Yi bully her? Captain Song, don't do anything rash. Lu Wangli jumped when he saw that Lingshan was about to hit Lin Yi. He knew how strong Lingshan was. Even the highly trained officers in the Songshan police station were rarely her match, let alone normal people. Chapter 279. Lingshan, stop messing around. As a result, Lu Wangli was a little scared seeing Lingshan about to make a move on Lin Yi. Lin Yi and Yushu were drowning people, and not only was he not going to comfort them, he was going to make a move on them. Wouldn't he be in big trouble if his superiors found out? Lingshan was really pissed off. No one had ever called her a tiger girl in her entire life, and now Lin Yi was calling her a tiger a couple of times. How could she not be angry? She didn't care about the consequences, and threw a punch at Lin Yi's back. A normal person would have been knocked out cold by that punch. Lin Yi smiled, not dodging. Girls had a little temper, after all. And Lin Yi was a man who didn't fight with women. He let her have it, since Lin Yi really did call her a bad nickname. Lin Yi was actually just thinking about it, and he didn't know why he just blurted it out. Bang! Lingshan's punch landed on Lin Yi's back. Lu Wangli closed his eyes. The guy was probably done for. But then, something unbelievable happened. Lin Yi turned around with a smile. Alright Lingshan, stop messing around. Help me move the shark. Lingshan. Lin Yi called her Lingshan? Lingshan was a little dumbfounded. A man calling her that intimately. If it were the old Lingshan, she would have exploded a long time ago, but now, she really didn't know what to do. Lingshan knew very well how much strength she'd put into that punch, and she was regretting it a little. Even if Lin Yi was a golden class, getting punched by her would have been quite painful. But Lingshan's punch felt like she'd punched cotton. It was soft, and she didn't feel anything at all. As for Lin Yi, he didn't seem to feel the force of the punch at all. He even told himself to stop fooling around. Lingshan, however, knew that the punch was real. She just didn't know how Lin Yi had neutralized it. Lingshan was shocked. Just where did this man come from? Why didn't he feel anything when I punched him? Lingshan was surprised, but Wangli and Yushu were even more surprised. Lingshan's punch landed on Lin Yi's body. Naturally, they couldn't tell if Lingshan had used any strength or not. But judging from Lin Yi's relaxed expression and tone, it looked like a punch from a girl flirting with a girl. Lin Yi's words proved this point as well. Alright Lingshan, stop messing around. Make a scene? That meant that Lingshan's punch was really just a joke. Wangli, on the other hand, didn't have the eyesight to tell if Lingshan had used her full strength or not. And Yushu, on the other hand, couldn't tell either. Could it be that this man was Lingshan's rumored boyfriend? That's right. Wangli suddenly remembered that the man Lingshan was rumored to be with at the hospital. Wasn't his name Lin Yi? Wangli couldn't help but admire Lin Yi once more. Lingshan may be the prettiest girl in the police force, but she was also a violent Tyrannosaurus Rex. How many men could handle a woman like that? What if she got heavily injured during a fight? Lin Yi was actually just joking around with Lingshan. He didn't think too much about it, but looking at Wang Li and Yushu's expressions, he knew that they were thinking too much. Lingshan watched as Lin Yi carried the shark onto the motorboat, and as reluctant as she was, she didn't say anything. She'd suffered a few times at Lin Yi's hands, and she'd learned her lesson. She couldn't piss him off, but she could hide from him. That punch made Lingshan take Lin Yi seriously. It seemed like it wasn't a coincidence that he'd caught Heibao. Shield bro, are you and Lingshan really together? Yushu asked curiously as she followed Lin Yi onto the motorboat. No. Lin Yi didn't lie to Yushu. There was no need for something like that. Shield bro, are you for real? There's really nothing going on between you two? Yushu was a little disappointed. She'd gotten to know Lin Yi already. Lin Yi was the type of person who would admit to what he'd done. If he really had that kind of relationship with Lingshan, there was no way he wouldn't admit it. It was just like that time in the school field, when he'd pulled Tang Yun and slapped Zhou Ruoming in the face, declaring that Tang Yun was his woman. There really isn't. Lin Yi said, What else do you want from us? Man, there's some things you don't know. My brother's been chasing her for a couple of years, but she's acting all high and mighty, ignoring my brother, even insulting him, saying that my brother can't even beat her, that he's not a man. Yushu said, a little angry. I thought you'd taken care of that fox, shield bro, and showed her what it means to be strong. Lin Yi's eyes went wide as he looked at Yushu, speechless. Since when did she become a fox? She was in the hospital. Not with you. Yushu was usually a good talker, but she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed talking about this. Actually, it's not what you think. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. I had an injury on my leg that day, and she just wanted to punish me a little, so she went to press on my wound. I see. Yushu nodded understandingly. It seemed like she'd misunderstood Lingshan, thinking that the girl was getting horny after all. But it was a fact that she was afraid of Shield Bro. Yes, she wasn't Shield Bro's woman, but Shield Bro had the potential to conquer her. Not bad, at least she'd gotten her revenge. Yushu comforted herself. Lingshan heard Lin Yi and Yushu's mumbling in the back. Fortunately, Lu Wangli was driving the boat, and she was the only one close to them. It'd be so embarrassing if someone else heard it. Lingshan really wanted to strangle the girl when she heard Yushu call her a fox. How did she become a fox? She'd never had a scandal before, okay. Wait. No. Yushu's next sentence was about her scandal, wasn't it? News of her and Lin Yi at the hospital had spread all over the station, and her colleagues had been looking at her weirdly for the past few days. Lingshan, of course, knew what they were thinking. They'd all think that a violent girl like her would do something like that for a man? What a fantasy. She was just about to turn around and explain to Lin Yi, before he ruined her reputation, when Lin Yi told Yushu everything about their relationship. Lingshan wasn't expecting this at all. This guy was actually quite honorable. He didn't use this opportunity to slander her. Lingshan didn't know what to say about Yushu's childish thoughts. She rejected her brother, and this was how she got back at her. Chapter 280. Friends. Mengyao wasn't as worried as before after listening to Faubert's explanation and her father's comforting words. But it would be a lie to say that she wasn't nervous at all. Mengyao had been restless ever since she got home. After all, Yushu was her bestie from a young age. Her bestie? How could she not be worried? And that Lin Yi too. She didn't know if he was in any danger. She didn't like him, but she didn't want anything to happen to him. Mengyao didn't know why, but perhaps Lin Yi was her employee, and she didn't want anything to happen to him. It didn't take long for Lin Yi and Yushu to return safely, driven by Lu Wangli. Lingshan handed the task of escorting Lin Yi and Yushu to Lu Wangli as soon as she got back to the police station. She avoided Lin Yi as much as possible. She couldn't afford to piss him off, but she could afford to hide. Asking the captain of the criminal police to drive a shark to Lin Yi? Lingshan didn't want to do that. Lu Wangli, on the other hand, borrowed a van from the traffic police and sent Lin Yi and Yushu back to the villa with the shark. In truth, Lu Wangli quite admired Lin Yi. He was no ordinary person after all, being able to pursue the female tyrannosaurus of the police force. Shu, you're okay? That's great. Meng Yao was very excited to see Yushu's safe return. She opened her arms and hugged Yushu. Yao Yao, I'm fine. I've been doing pretty well. Yushu, on the other hand, wasn't feeling the way Meng Yao did. Meng Yao was more worried, but Yushu had a good meal of shark meat and played in the sand. It was a happy Saturday. Lin Yi, on the other hand, shook his head at the two girls hugging each other. Did they really have to be like this? If they were this excited after falling into the sea, he'd have to hug Huaijuan and the others every day. Meng Yao turned to Lin Yi after hugging Yushu. She was a little worried, but she didn't show it on her face. She was about to say something to comfort him when she saw the shark on Lin Yi's shoulder. Lin Yi, what are you carrying? Oh right, Yao Yao, this is the shark that Shield Bro killed. He's roasting the shark meat for me. It's delicious, so I asked him to bring the rest back and roast it for you. Yushu quickly explained. Meng Yao was quite touched by Yushu's words. They'd grown up together, after all, and had a deep sisterly bond. Yushu didn't forget about her even when she was in trouble. She reached out to give Yushu another hug. Shu, thank you. Hey, I'm the one carrying the shark. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Thank you too. Lin Yi. Meng Yao nodded to Lin Yi, a little embarrassed, but she couldn't hug Lin Yi. All of a sudden, Meng Yao remembered something. Shark. Shu, did you say that Lin Yi is carrying a shark? Yeah. Yushu nodded. It's a big shark, really delicious. What? A shark? Meng Yao's eyes went wide. Lin Yi, you killed a shark? Ha! Lin Yi smiled. If I don't kill him, he'll eat me and Shu. Meng Yao really didn't know what to say. The man in front of her was full of miracles. Was this the reason he killed the shark? So many people have been eaten by sharks. Why didn't they go and kill the sharks? Lin Yi said it casually, but Meng Yao could imagine how dangerous the situation was. In actuality, Meng Yao had guessed wrongly this time. Lin Yi had killed the shark with ease. Thank you for protecting Shu. Meng Yao nodded to Lin Yi. Since Lin Yi said so, Meng Yao didn't say anything else. She's my friend. You don't have to thank me. Lin Yi shook his head. Meng Yao's heart suddenly felt empty after hearing Lin Yi's words. Lin Yi protected her because she was his employer. Meng Yao wanted to thank Lin Yi for protecting Yushu, because Lin Yi's job was only to protect her, not Yushu. However, Lin Yi's simple words made it clear that he wasn't protecting Yushu because of his relationship with her, but because they were friends. He and Yushu were friends, but Meng Yao felt a little down at the thought. What about me? I wouldn't have saved Jiang Wen today if it wasn't for you. I hate that guy. Lin Yi smiled. He didn't expect Meng Yao to be so considerate. Meng Yao remembered that when she begged Lin Yi today, Lin Yi wasn't too willing. But she said it was a personal request, and Lin Yi helped. Yes, personal request. Naturally, they were friends. Unconsciously, Meng Yao started to care about this man she hated so much. In the villa, Meng Yao held Yushu's hand as they sat on the sofa chatting. She had wanted to comfort Yushu, thinking that Yushu must have been pretty scared after falling into the sea. But Meng Yao had miscalculated. Yushu wasn't scared at all. Instead, she started telling her how to build a sand castle on the beach, how to start a fire with wood, how to roast shark meat. It was no different from a vacation in the wild. Meng Yao was envious. She even wondered why she wasn't the one who fell into the sea. If she knew that Lin Yi was this capable, she wouldn't have been afraid of anything. She'd just jump with him, and she'd be able to eat and drink. Man, but Yao Yao, I have some bad news to tell you. Yushu suddenly remembered Lingshan's situation. Bad news? What bad news? Meng Yao was immersed in Yushu's picturesque scene. She was playing with the sand on the beach under the sun, and the smell of roast shark meat wafted from the fire. What a relaxing picnic. Lingshan isn't Shield Bro's woman. Shield Bro has nothing to do with her. Yushu was a little disappointed. I wanted her to be a servant girl and step on her a little, but she's still not Lin Yi's woman? If she isn't, then she isn't. But what does that have to do with being a servant girl? Meng Yao was thinking that it wasn't good news. How could this be bad news? The most annoying thing was that he was messing around outside. Chapter 281. Chapter 281. The Fish's Belly Dam. Meng Yao looked at Yushu oddly. You like Shield Bro, so you like him. Why do you have to drag me into it? Meng Yao finally understood what was going on with this big girl. But why did her best friend always drag her into it? Not at all, Yao Yao. Didn't we agree that I'd marry whoever you marry? That we'd never be apart? Yushu said with a straight face. Oh, then what if I don't marry Lin Yi, and I marry Zhong Pingliang? Would you marry him too? Meng Yao said as she looked at Yushu. She knew her best friend, didn't she? They'd grown up together, eating and living together every day. Who wouldn't know each other? Ugh. Yushu froze, not expecting a question like that from Meng Yao. She blushed, not knowing what to say. Why aren't you talking? Meng Yao glared at Yushu. Do you not want to be apart from me? Or do you want to marry Lin Yi? Yao Yao. Yushu started swinging Meng Yao's arm. Of course I don't want to be apart from you. Humph. Meng Yao humphed as she looked at Yushu. Yushu blushed, feeling a little guilty. Alright. You should at least marry someone you like. That Zhong Pingliang's too annoying. Tell me the truth. So you like Lin Yi? Meng Yao asked. Nah, I just think he's okay. I don't hate him. Yushu explained. Little liar. Meng Yao poked Yushu's forehead. Don't worry, I won't marry him. You can marry him yourself if you want. Oh, Yushu didn't really care. She felt that Yao Yao never meant what she said. Lin Yi was cleaning up the shark in the kitchen. Shark meat wasn't very tasty, and Meng Yao would probably think it was just SO after tasting it. But since she'd already gotten it back, Meng Yao wouldn't give up until she tried it. He'd only cleaned up a bit on the beach, slicing off a few pieces of meat from the shark's tail. It was enough for him and Yushu. Now that he had thrown the shark from the middle, Lin Yi could only sigh at how huge the shark was. Clang! A crisp metallic sound rang out. The saber in Lin Yi's hand seemed to have touched metal. Lin Yi was startled. Was there something else in the shark's stomach? It had long been said that when someone salvaged a shark, they would take out rings and other jewelry from the shark's belly. Many of them were eaten together with the shark when it was eating people. However, the rings could not be digested, so they remained in the fish's belly. Could it be that he had also won a prize? Lin Yi quickly threw the shark away and took out the foreign object in the shark's belly. But it was obvious that it was not a ring, nor was it some jewelry. This was because the size of the foreign object was very big. Not only was it very big, but it was shockingly big. When Lin Yi took it out, he couldn't help but be shocked. It was a small device that looked like something that controlled a motor, and there was a big airbag behind it. It seemed to be a remote control device similar to a balancer, but it was covered in rust. From the degree of corrosion, it should have been there for a long time. This was a shark that had been trained and modified by someone. If Lin Yi's guess was right, this balancer-like device should be able to control the direction and speed of the shark, and the airbag should be able to control the height of the shark in the water. No wonder he didn't feel much of a burden when he was swimming with Yushu and dragging a shark behind him. It turned out that it was more like dragging an inflatable raft. But who modified this shark? What was the purpose of this modification? It was obvious that this control device had lost its function. Otherwise, he wouldn't have met this shark. Lin Yi took out the control device and looked at it carefully. This wasn't a high-tech product. With the current technology, it wasn't difficult to make such a thing. The key question was, what was this shark used for? However, this matter had nothing to do with him, so Lin Yi didn't think too much about it. He was about to throw the control device aside when he suddenly found that there was a small door at the bottom of the control device that could be opened. Lin Yi pulled it, and the small door was locked. There was a keyhole on it, and it should be an ordinary key. Lin Yi found a toothpick in the kitchen and picked it back and forth a few times, and the small door opened. A small box sealed with a plastic sheet fell out, and Lin Yi picked it up casually. The small box wasn't exquisite, but it was very tight. It was a bit like the popular Yushu box, but it was made of metal. Lin Yi tore off the plastic sheet and waited for a while. The jade on his body didn't give any warning, so Lin Yi forcefully opened the metal box. Lenny would naturally be careful, because no one knew what was in the box. What if it was a bomb? If Lenny exploded as soon as he opened the box, that would be a little too tragic. Huh. Lenny took out the thing in the box, and was slightly surprised. The thing inside was a sheepskin. To be precise, it was a map made of sheepskin. But it wasn't a complete map but a fragment. As for how much it was, Lenny couldn't deduce for the time being. And on the map, the text written was also a language that Lenny had never seen before. Lenny knew some of the languages of most countries in the world. Even if he didn't, Lenny could roughly recognize which language it belonged to. But the text on the map didn't belong to any of the languages in the world. Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that it was a small country, or a small tribe that Lenny didn't know, or an ancient civilization that had been lost. Of course, Lin Yi's most inclined situation was that this was a secret code, or a password. Only those who knew the decryption rules could read the meaning on it. At this moment, Lenny probably understood that this shark was regarded as an intelligence or a transmission tool for this blueprint. It was just that there was an accident on the way, and this shark lost control. It didn't complete this mission, so both the controller and the map were left in its belly. In the vast sea, it was probably difficult to find such a shark again. It was just that Lenny happened to encounter it. Chapter 282. Board of Directors Shu. Is this the delicious shark meat you were talking about? Meng Yao said as she chewed on the fish. It wasn't even as tasty as a regular carp. Meng Yao didn't want to say no to Yushu's expectant face, especially after all the work Lin Yi had done for the entire afternoon. Now that the shark was cooked, it smelled pretty good, but the meat wasn't delicious at all. It was just average at best. Yeah. Yushu's appetite was piqued as she smelled the aroma of the shark meat. She stuck a piece into her mouth and started chewing happily. Why isn't this shark meat as good as it was at noon? Yushu frowned as well. She tasted it attentively. It was still the same flavor, and the seasoning made the fish even more fragrant. But it wasn't as good as it was for lunch. Shark meat isn't that good in the first place. Lenny started eating as well. You were too scared at noon, and you puked everything out along with the seawater. It'd be weird if you weren't hungry. That's why you're enjoying it. I see, Yushu said, a little embarrassed. Yao Yao, maybe you don't have to eat. How can I? Meng Yao shook her head. I have to. This is a token of your sincerity, and I'm really happy eating it. Oh, eat more then. I think it's pretty good, Yushu said as she put another piece of fish into her mouth. Fuck. Are you an idiot? Gubong glared at his son furious. Lin Yi and Yushu aren't dead. The police already sent the news. This is huge. What else could it be? Mao Xing paused. Pengzhan, that old fox. He's holding a board meeting tomorrow. I think he's going to use this as a pretext. Gubong said hatefully. If I let him take back the businesses I control, he'll be able to find problems with just a simple investigation. We're done for. Mao Xing wasn't an idiot. His face darkened after hearing his father's words. He hadn't thought too much about it before. It was a pity that Lin Yi wasn't dead, but it wasn't a big deal. There was always a next time. But Pengzhan was using the theme park incident to weaken House Jin's power. The theme park happened to be one of Gubong. It was up to Pengzhan to decide how big or small the accident would be. Dad, I'm sorry. Mao Xing didn't think that Pengzhan would react this quickly after what he'd done today. Forget it. He won't be able to find anything in such a short time. Don't we still have a trump card? I didn't want to go this far, but since he's forcing my hand, then don't blame me for not going easy on him. Gubong smiled coldly. Does he think I'm an idiot that's easy to bully? If he wants to weaken my power, then I'll remove you from your position as chairman first. A look of surprise flashed in Mao Xing's eyes. This was the first time he'd realized that his father still had a trump card in his hands. His father had always been eating away at the company's assets and power, using this method to gain control of the company. But Gubong seemed to have other plans, and he seemed very confident that he'd be able to remove Pengzhan from his chairman. This surprised Mao Xing. Dad, Mao Sheng was about to ask something when Gubong cut him off with a wave of his hand. Don't ask so many questions, just focus on what you're doing, Gubong said. Right. Did you take care of the guy who brought them bungee jumping? Ma-huh? I've already hinted to Zhang Yuzhou to get rid of him. Mao Sheng said. Don't worry, Dad. No one will be able to trace today's incident back to us. Won't they? Humph. That old fox Pengzhan didn't even think about investigating. Gubong smiled coldly. I underestimated him. He actually called the police and told them to stop investigating since Yushu and Lin Yi were fine. It's obvious that he's trying to pin the blame on House Jin. Mao Sheng didn't know what to say. He was the one who'd done it in the first place. Wouldn't House Jin be done for if there was a problem? It was Sunday morning, and Pengzhan Industries called for an emergency meeting. Gubong sat beside Pengzhan with a cold face. He was the second shareholder of the company, the vice chairman. It was only right for him to sit there. All right, everyone's here. We'll start the meeting now. Pengzhan didn't waste time with pleasantries, getting straight to the point. As you all know, there was a vicious accident yesterday at the theme park under our company. The victim was my daughter's good friend Yushu. If something were to happen to her, our entire Pengzhan Industries wouldn't be able to escape the blame. I'm sure everyone here knows about Yushu's background. It wasn't much of a secret. The shareholders all knew about it, and so they all nodded at Pengzhan's words. Indeed, if something were to happen to Yushu, it'd be a huge problem. Fortunately, Yushu's fine, and the police rescued her. Pengzhan said. So it's obvious that we've been negligent in our management. If we'd been more careful with the bungee jumping ropes, this wouldn't have happened. Gubong listened to Pengzhan's words coldly as he tried to come up with a countermeasure. He wouldn't use his trump card unless it was absolutely necessary. Doing that would achieve his goal in the shortest time possible. But it'd be hard to convince the people even if he were to take the chairman's position. If he were to give away the entire real estate company, none of the shareholders would support him. He couldn't just do things his way. He needed to slowly gather his power and merge it all together. I don't want to look into anyone's responsibility. The theme park may be managed by Vice Chairman Jean, but I don't think you'd want something like this to happen. Would you, Vice Chairman Jean? Pengzhan asked. Of course. No one would want an accident like this to happen. Gubong replied faintly. He was smiling coldly inwardly, not looking into anyone's responsibility. His intentions weren't in the bar. Chapter 283. Chapter 283. Changes in the board. Guangbua was the third largest stockholder of the company, the one with the most power after Pengzhan and Jean Mao Sheng. There shouldn't be any objections from the other shareholders when Pengzhan suggested that he take over the entertainment business. Raising their hands against Pengzhan's suggestion would get them into Gubong's good graces, but they'd be offending both Guangbua and Pengzhan at the same time. The other shareholders wouldn't be able to make a decision like that. It was a smart move Pengzhan had made as well, transferring power to another major stockholder, leaving Gubong and the other shareholders with nothing to say. It was a flawless move, but while it was a smart move, Pengzhan had miscalculated. Gubong paused at the suggestion, but his heart was bursting with joy. Pengzhan, you old fox. You've been plotting to weaken my power all this time, but now? If you'd really forcefully taken back my power, the board would have approved it. After all, you're the chairman, and the other shareholders wouldn't be able to go against you. At most, you'd just leave a strong impression. But now, you're giving the entertainment business to Guangbua? Ha 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 ha. Gubong almost laughed out loud. This Guangbua was the ultimate trump card of his side, the final trump card. In actuality, getting this trump card was a complete fluke. If Pengzhan had made his move a few days earlier, Gubong really wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. After all, he hadn't been friends with Guangbua back then. But now Guangbua needed his help. Without his help, he wouldn't be able to have a son. Guangbua had a son abroad, spending his days in casinos and gambling. Not only did he owe a lot of money, but he'd also gotten into a drug habit, owing hundreds of millions of yuan to loan sharks. Guangbua was the third largest stockholder of the company, but he didn't have a lot of cash on hand. Most of his assets were stocks and real estate, and it was impossible for him to take out hundreds of millions of yuan to pay off his son's debt. But the money had to be returned. His son was abroad, under the control of a local gang. If he didn't get the money in a month, they'd break his son's arms and legs. Guangbo had no choice but to use his position as the supervisor of the company's finance department to embezzle a sum of money and return it when he had enough. Although he was in charge of the finance department, it was impossible to use such a large sum of money without the signature of the chairman or vice chairman. He didn't dare tell Pengzhan, so he could only place his hopes on Gubang. Naturally, he didn't dare say it out loud either. He'd only mentioned it to Gubang in a roundabout way, not expecting the two to hit it off so well. Gubang didn't have any other requests. He only hoped that Guangbo would help him when he needed it. Guangbo knows this is what they call choosing sides. Normally, the three major shareholders of a company are relatively independent, and if any two shareholders are too close, it will be a threat to the other shareholders. However, Guangbo had no other choice. His son's life was more important than anything else. If his son died, everything would be over. No matter how much money he earned, it would be useless. He had already lived for more than half of his life. How much more could he spend in the remaining days? Wouldn't it still be left for their children and grandchildren? He'd lost his son, not to mention his grandson. And so, Guangbo made a difficult decision. He'd completely side with Gubang. He knew very well what that meant. Gubang's request was a clear signal to Guangbo that he was ready to fight for power with Pengzhan. Guangbo didn't expect that Pengzhan would make things difficult for Gubang so soon, and that he'd be the one to benefit from it. Guangbo wouldn't have rejected something like this in the past, but he didn't dare accept it now. He'd already formed an alliance with Gubang. He had to consider Gubang's interests at all times. He raised his head to look at Gubang. Gubang was looking back at him, and he nodded subtly to show that he understood. Gubang's smile deepened as he continued Pengzhan's words. Haha, Chairman Chu's words do make sense, but I won't say anything since this concerns me. Pengzhan paused after listening to Gubang. He'd thought that Gubang would be the first to jump out and object, but he'd chosen to remain silent and give up. Then this attitude was a little ambiguous. Could it be that Gubang didn't have anything on the entertainment side and wasn't afraid of Pengzhan catching him? Pengzhan frowned. Something must have gone wrong in the board meeting, but he couldn't figure out what the problem was either. Since Gubang didn't object, the other board members naturally didn't object to Pengzhan's suggestion. No one would want to offend Pengzhan if you didn't object to it yourself. And so, without a doubt, the board of directors approved Pengzhan's suggestion to lighten Gubang's burden. Haha, since there's no objection, then we'll leave the entertainment side of the company to Chairman Xia. Pengzhan wasn't expecting the board meeting to go so well. It was a little odd, but weakening Gubang's power was still a good thing. Chairman Chu, as the person involved, shouldn't I make a suggestion? Guangbo spoke up faintly. Oh. Pengzhan paused, his heart skipping a beat. What do you want to say, Chairman Xia? Haha, I don't think there's a need to hand over the entertainment side of things to me, is there? Guangbo said calmly. We can't completely deny Chairman Jin's achievements and abilities just because of a small incident. The entertainment side of the company still has tens of millions of profits under Chairman Jin's management. I can't say that I'm as good at management as Chairman Jin, so I don't recommend handing over the entertainment side of Chairman Jin's management to me. I'm sorry, Chairman, but my abilities are limited. I refuse. Pengzhan's pupils shrunk as he stared at Guangbo. Since when did this guy get involved with Jin Gubang? Why were they on the same side? Guangbo was speaking up for Gubang. Chapter 284. I'm a freeloader. The only possibility was that Gubang and Guangbo had come to some sort of agreement in private. But Pengzhan didn't know what it was. A bad feeling rose in his heart. Guangbo looked at Gubang smugly after he was done, only to find that Gubang's face was as black as a sheet. Yes, very, very dark. Gubang was about to explode from anger. He'd been very happy when Pengzhan said that he'd be handing over his entertainment business to Guangbo. But now that Guangbo was rejecting it, Gubong couldn't help but curse him for being an idiot. Why did you reject it? Couldn't you just accept it? It's in your hands anyways, why wouldn't I be at ease? We're in the same boat now. I'm not afraid of you betraying me. Would you be able to save your son if you did? But wouldn't Pengjan know about the relationship between the two of them if you rejected him like this? Gubong hadn't wanted to expose their relationship so prematurely, planning to give Pengjan a fatal blow when he least expected it. Now that their relationship had been exposed, the so-called surprise attack was no longer possible. Pengjan would definitely be on his guard, and he'd have to make use of this relationship. Gubong really wanted to curse at him. He'd finally gotten a trump card, and he didn't think he'd have to use it this soon. He didn't want to fall out with Pengjan just yet, because even if he did become chairman, as long as Pengjan was still around, he wouldn't be able to give away the real estate company on his own. Gubong glared at Guangbo hatefully, but there was nothing he could do at this point. No matter how hard he tried to deny it, anyone could tell that he had a relationship with Guangbo. There was no point in trying to explain anything. Capable people do more work. If that's the case, we'll do as Mr. Xie says. Pengjan humphed coldly. Let's leave the entertainment business to Mr. Jean. I hope that Mr. Jean can train and reorganize as soon as possible, so that accidents like this don't happen again. Don't worry, Chairman. I'll reorganize the amusement park immediately. Gubong nodded. Pengjan was pissed, but so was he. Why was this Guangbo so stupid? Their relationship was exposed just like that? Gubong didn't go home right away after the meeting was a journey. He asked Guangbo out instead. Now that their relationship had been exposed, they had to move faster. That way, they'd be able to complete the chairman election before Pengjan could react. On Monday, Lin Yi sat in Faubert's car and went to school. He packed some shark meat in a food container for Kong Xiaobo, Tang Yin and Xiaofun. Anyway, it was a whole shark. Lin Yi roasted a large plate and stuffed the remaining half of the shark into the freezer. As for the map fragment in the shark's stomach, Lin Yi put it away in his drawer. He couldn't understand it right now, so Lin Yi didn't spend too much time studying it. He'd just have to wait for the chance to do so in the future. After what happened on Saturday, the relationship between the three had improved quite a bit. Meng Yao, at least, wasn't putting on a stern face anymore. Even if she had a problem with Lin Yi's womanizing ways, she wouldn't say it out loud. Meng Yao and Yushu kept talking about random topics on the way, but Lin Yi wasn't too interested. They were all things that girls liked, like fashion, cosmetics, and so on. Lin Yi didn't have anything to say. They were almost at school when Yushu pointed at a Mercedes not far away. Yao Yao, isn't that Pinliang's family car? Meng Yao couldn't help but frown at Yushu's words. She raised her head and saw Pinliang getting out of the car. Pinliang was under a lot of pressure. His uncle had called him last night to ask about the progress between him and Meng Yao. He heard that they hadn't even held hands yet, and Gubong had already called him a piece of trash. His uncle seemed to be making a move on Pengjan Industries, but he hadn't even gotten Meng Yao yet. His uncle had given him a death order to get it done within a week, no matter what, even if he had to use force. What's done is done, and Pengjan Industries would be his. Gubong actually didn't want Pinliang and Meng Yao to be together. Pengjan only had one daughter, and his family business would definitely be given to Meng Yao in the future. In other words, Pinliang would be in Pinliang's hands. But Fabai wasn't someone who would willingly submit to someone else. Although Pinliang and Meng Yao being together would temporarily alleviate the pressure of him removing Pengjan from his position as the new chairman, it was only temporary. Once Fabai gained power, he might use Pengjan's shares to bite back at him. But he had no other choice. Since his relationship with Guangbo had been exposed, he had to seize the opportunity to take control of the company. As long as Pinliang could handle Meng Yao and Pengjan, he would have time to take control of the company. Pinliang got out of the car and turned around to see Meng Yao's Bentley behind him. He was just worried that he wouldn't have a chance to interact with Meng Yao. He ran over immediately when he saw Meng Yao's car, waiting for Meng Yao to get out. Yao Yao sis, he's here. Yushu giggled as she looked at the attentive Pinliang. Oh my god. Meng Yao rubbed her forehead. Why was this guy so annoying? Was there an end to it? Lin Yi, get out of the car and chase him away. Me, get out of the car? Linny paused. Wouldn't he expose his relationship with Meng Yao if he got out of the car now? Yeah, get out of the car and chase him away. Meng Yao nodded. I don't want to see him. What if he asks why I'm in your car? Linny smiled bitterly. It's on the way, let's hitch a ride. Meng Yao didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Why don't you just not explain? He won't think too much anyway. You are Tang Yun's boyfriend. Meng Yao humphed inwardly. He was a shield her dad had hired, and now Tang Yun had gotten it for free. Just thinking about it pissed her off. Huh. Linny smiled and got out of the car. Yao Yao. Huh. Linny. Why are you in Yao Yao's car? Pinliang thought that it was Meng Yao who got out of the car, and was about to come over and talk to her. But he didn't expect to see Linny there. Hitch a ride on the way. Linny looked at Pinliang coldly. I'll count to 3, get out of my way 1 2. Chapter 285. Chapter 285. Dr. Kang's birthday banquet. Linny, naturally, wouldn't say anything to Meng Yao in the car after Pinliang left. It'd only cause more misunderstandings. Linny hummed a little tune as he walked towards school with the 2 containers in his hands. Another beautiful day of school life had begun. Linny had just reached the school gate when he heard someone calling him from behind. He turned around and saw that it was Lu Xingwen running towards him. Behind Lu Xingwen was a pretty girl. Who else could it be other than Tang Yun? Ah, Linny didn't need to ask to know that Xingwen had become Tang Yun's messenger again. Xingwen, what's up? Yun wants you to wait for her for lunch. Xingwen's impression of Lin Yi had changed a little. It was also because of Fun's situation that Lin Yi was actively helping out, and so Xingwen didn't reject Lin Yi as much as before. Since Yun had accepted it, and was together with him, why should she care about anything else? Xingwen had the same thought in her heart. Sure. Lin Yi didn't even think about it. He wanted to let Tang Yin taste the shark meat at noon, and the shark's fin was the only valuable part of the shark. Lin Yi divided it into 2 portions, putting one into Xiaobo's box for him to bring to Fun, and the other for Tang Yin. As for Meng Yao and Yushu, the 2 misses didn't care about shark fins at all. As they said, what's so good about shark fins? Tang Yun was evidently embarrassed to be so close to Lin Yi in school. She blushed when Lin Yi looked over, and turned her head away, pretending that she didn't see Lin Yi at all. That flirtatious look made all the passing boys a little dazed. But no one dared to covet Tang Yun now. Everyone knew that she was the new school bully, Lin Yi's girlfriend. Even Zhou Ruoming was beaten up so badly. Who would dare do something like that? Xingwen quickly ran back and left with Tang Yun. Lin Yi shook his head. Should he buy Tang Yun a phone? His phone was broken as well, and he needed to get a new one. It seems that in the end, I still need to earn some money first. Although he could still afford a phone, he would still need to spend money in the future. He couldn't do that if he wasn't financially independent. Lin Yi was starting to regret giving all his money to his old man. He didn't have anything to spend money on back then, so he just let him be. Now that he needed money, he hated that he didn't have enough. When he got to the classroom, Kong Xiaobo was already there. He complained when he saw Lin Yi. Boss, where did you go yesterday? I called you the whole day, but your phone was turned off. I still have something important to discuss with you. Oh, you were looking for me yesterday? Lin Yi paused and remembered that his phone was soaked in water. It wasn't turned off, so he said, My phone is broken, what's wrong? It's my second grandpa's birthday next weekend. He invited me too. I was thinking if I should bring Xiaofan with me. Kong Xiaobo hesitated and said. Lin Yi was the only one who could make decisions for him in this kind of situation. Bring Xiaofan? To attend your second grandpa's birthday banquet? Lin Yi looked at Kong Xiaobo strangely. You want her to meet Kong Mingming? Yes. Boss, you know that Kong Mingming is a knot in Xiaofan's heart. If we don't get rid of this knot, even if she's with me, she will still think about Kong Mingming. Kong Xiaobo said. Although Xiaofan told me that she has already given up on Kong Mingming, I can be sure that there's still Kong Ming Ming deep in her heart from her sadness. Lenny nodded. Kong Xiaobo wasn't stupid. He didn't like Xiaofan blindly. He knew how to look at the relationship between the two of them. You're right. If she doesn't have Kong Ming Ming in her subconscious, then she won't have schizophrenia, nor will she have delusions. In fact, the root cause of Xiaofan's schizophrenia is Kong Ming Ming. If she can end it with Kong Ming Ming, then the wound in her heart will heal by itself. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Xiaobo said. So boss, I want to ask you to come with me, okay? Me? Go with you? Lenny didn't expect Kong Xiaobo to have such a request. Why would I go? Besides, do you need to bring so many outsiders to your second grandpa's birthday banquet? Kong Xiaobo bringing Xiaofan along was barely acceptable. However, if Kong Xiaobo said that Xiaofan was his girlfriend, it was still acceptable. What would it be if Lenny went? Kong Xiaobo's classmate? Boss, you said it before. The root cause of Xiaofan's schizophrenia is Kong Ming Ming. I'm bringing her to end it. But I'm also afraid that Xiaofan won't be able to bear the pressure of sadness. What if her illness acts up again? Kong Xiaobo said worriedly. Actually, boss, I also want you to give me some courage. Since you call me boss, it's not a problem for me to go with you. Lin Yi naturally didn't mind going with Xiaobo, but he said, I told you before, you're bringing so many people, are you sure it'll work? Don't worry about this, boss. Kong Xiaobo said. In fact, my second grandpa's family would hold many gatherings like this every year. The birthday banquet is just one of the reasons. Every time, he would invite some friends to bring their children to participate. It's mainly to improve the friendship of the next generation. Although it's called a birthday banquet, it's actually a cocktail party for networking resources. Everyone can bring their friends to participate. It's just that I didn't like to socialize like this in the past, and no one would try to make friends with me. As he said this, Kong Xiaobo laughed at himself. As a descendant of House Kong, he was the one who was ignored every year. Looking at his cousins being surrounded by a group of boys and girls, Kong Xiaobo felt a little disappointed. But it wasn't surprising. Those who came to make friends with him weren't stupid. The direct descendants of Dr. Kong were the ones who were valued. For a branch descendant like Kong Xiaobo, it was fine as long as they didn't lose face. No one would purposely try to please him. I see. Let's go then. Lenny nodded. Lenny also wanted to see what kind of person Dr. Kong was. In the future, if he cooperated with Dr. Kong, he would definitely become a competitor. Boss, do you want to bring Tang Yin along? Kong Xiaobo smiled and suggested. Chapter 286. Written in blood by Liang Bro. I just want to find a partner for fun, Kong Xiaobo said. I'm afraid that Feng won't have any fun going by herself. She's best friends with Tang Yun. I'll ask her then. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't make the decision for Tang Yun. Alright, I'll ask Feng to talk to her again. Kong Xiaobo finally had one thing off his mind. If Lin Yi wasn't with him, he really wouldn't dare bring Feng along. God knows what kind of trouble would happen. Right, here's something for you, Lin Yi said as he took out a container from the bag and handed it to Kong Xiaobo. What's this? Kong Xiaobo took it and looked at it. It looked like food. Shark meat and shark fins. Are you going to the hospital to visit Finn? Bring it along, you guys can eat together, Lin Yi said. Shark meat and shark fins? No way. Boss, where did you get this? It's pretty rare, isn't it? Kong Xiaobo's eyes were wide open. I bought it from the market. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't say that he killed the shark himself. That would be too shocking. Haha, I knew you're good to me, boss. I'll go enjoy it with fun at noon, haha. Kong Xiaobo said happily as he put away the container. Pin Liang was very pissed today. It was like this Lin Yi was sent by the heavens to oppose him. Why was it that every time he wanted to do something, Lin Yi was always in his way? Hitchhiking? Motherfucker, how could he get a free ride? This kid was pretty shameless, hitchhiking with Mingyao's family? The most infuriating part was that Ming Yao actually allowed him to hitchhike? Are you kidding me? Of course, Pin Liang didn't think that Lin Yi had anything to do with Ming Yao. First, Ming Yao wouldn't fall for Lin Yi. Second, Lin Yi had a girlfriend. His girlfriend was the commoner school beauty Tang Yun. Everyone in the school knew about this, including Ming Yao. Therefore, if there was any interaction between the two of them, it could only be what Lin Yi had said, that they had hitched a ride. As for why Lin Yi was hitchhiking, Pin Liang couldn't ask. If he asked Ming Yao, she'd ignore him. Asking Lin Yi was asking for a beating. Brother Liang, what's wrong? Why do you look so worried? Xiaofu asked carefully as he looked at Pin Liang's hurt face. Now that Naipeo was gone, he was Pin Liang's only dog. Pin Liang wasn't having a good time, and Xiaofu wasn't having a good time either. He used to be arrogant, and no one dared to mess with him. Now he had to be careful, afraid that he'd piss off a god like Lin Yi and beat them up again. How were they supposed to live like this? It's all because of that bastard Lin Yi. That bastard. I wanted to go talk to Ming Yao this morning, but that bastard just happened to be there and kicked me out. Pin Liang was furious, but he didn't dare speak too loudly. Xiaofu withered when he heard that it was Lin Yi's fault. Liang bro, we're weak right now. We're no match for him. We need to think about this. If we can't, we'll just endure it until we graduate from high school and go to college. I don't believe that Lin Yi will still be with us then. Forget it, let's not talk about him. Pin Liang didn't want to talk about Lin Yi either. The problem is, how can I move Ming Yao? She doesn't seem to have any feelings for me? I think I've done enough. Why doesn't she like me? That's... Xiaofu hesitated. Liang bro, Ming Yao's not a normal person. She's from a good family as well. So I don't think normal methods will work on her. We'll have to use some special methods if we want to move her. What's that? Xiaofu, do you have any good ideas? Pin Liang's eyes lit up. He seemed to think that Xiaofu was making sense. I read a book a few days ago. When the male lead was chasing after his girlfriend, he wrote a letter of blood. It was written with his own blood. After the female lead saw it, she was so touched that she became the male lead's girlfriend. I think this is a good idea. Liang bro, if you have the courage, why don't you give it a try? Letter of blood? That's a good idea. Pin Liang thought about it and nodded. It's a very touching thing. I think I'd be moved by my sincerity if I were Ming Yao. Yeah, Liang bro, just write a few more lines. I'm sure Ming Yao'll say yes if she's moved. Xiaofu nodded. Alright, got it. How about this after class? Spread the news that I'm writing a letter of blood to Ming Yao. Let the whole class know about it. It'll help me build momentum. Pin Liang said. That'll show my sincerity. No problem. Xiaofu nodded. He didn't dare go against Lin Yi, but he was very familiar with other things in the class. And so, after the first class, under Xiaofu's purposeful spreading of the news, Ming Yao's diehard pursuer Pin Liang was going to write a letter of blood to Ming Yao. It was such a sensational and romantic news. The boring life of a 12th grader in school consisted of studying for exams and preparing for exams. Even the slightest thing could cause a ripple. Of course, this ripple started quickly and ended just as quickly. This was because most of the students were doing it for a moment of novelty and wanted to have some fun. After studying intensely, they wanted to have a change of mind and relax. After that, they would once again dive into the sea of questions. Just like Lin Yi beating up Heibao bro, Lin Yi giving a love letter to Tang Yin, and Lin Yi slapping Zhou Ruoming in front of the dean. These things spread quickly, but they disappeared just as quickly. After a few days, no one paid attention to it anymore. Pin Liang's letter of blood, on the other hand, only lasted for 2 classes before no one brought it up again. Perhaps it'd attract attention when he gave Ming Yao a letter of blood? Ming Yao was a little pissed off. Writing a letter of blood? What was the meaning of this? Was he trying to scare her? So what if it was a letter of blood? Did she have to agree to it? Shu, tell me, this Pin Liang is too much. He's writing a letter of blood to me. Is he threatening me? Ming Yao said angrily. What's the big deal about bleeding a little? Yeah, Yao Yao and I bleed every month. It's not a big deal. Yushu nodded. Chapter 287. You go stop him. What's wrong, Yao Yao? Yushu didn't know that she'd just made Meng Yao speechless. Shoo, don't say stuff like that in the future. You can't just say stuff like that. It'll be embarrassing if a guy hears this. Meng Yao said patiently. Meng Yao, on the other hand. Oh, I don't think it's a big deal. Right, I think we've run out of sanitary pads. I was going to ask Shield Bro to buy some. Yushu said nonchalantly. No way. How could you ask a guy to buy something so private for you? Meng Yao glared at Yushu. I'll call Faubert later. Ugh. Yushu blinked. Yao Yao, isn't Faubert a guy? Yushu felt that Faubert was so pitiful, and had been sent to the palace by Meng Yao a couple of times already. What would he think if he found out? That's different, Faubert's an elder. Meng Yao felt that she'd gone overboard a little too. Faubert hadn't been treated as a man for a couple of times already. Oh, all right then. Yushu nodded, not really understanding. Let Faubert buy it then. That's more like it. Right, how do we stop Pinliang from writing that blood letter? It sounds really scary. I don't want to have nightmares after receiving a blood letter. Meng Yao said. You'll have to ask Shield Bro for that. Let him handle it. Yushu's mindset was to ask Lin Yi for help. Okay, then send him a text message, and let him handle it. Meng Yao nodded, thinking that Shu's idea was the only way. She'd have to ask Lin Yi for help as well. Lin Yi looked at the text on his phone, speechless. Yao Yao asked you to stop Pinliang from writing the blood letter. It's all up to you now. He could beat Pinliang up. But stopping him from writing the blood letter was a little too much, wasn't it? There was no reason for him to do anything, was there? He couldn't just warn Pinliang that he wouldn't write a letter of blood to Meng Yao, or he'd beat him up. However, with what identity should he go? Lin Yi had a slight headache. But since Miss Chu had given the order, Lin Yi stood up and wobbled his way over to Pinliang's direction. Pinliang was holding a carving knife, hesitating whether or not he should cut his finger. Pinliang wasn't afraid of pain, but wasn't cutting his own finger a little too scary? Xiaofu, help me, I can't do it myself. Pinliang said as he handed the carving knife to Xiaofu. Oh, Gao Xiaofu didn't hesitate. After all, it wasn't his hand that was being cut. Then I'll cut it. Brother Liang, bear with it. All right. Hiss. Pinliang shuddered as blood flowed out of his fingertips. There weren't any big arteries on his fingertips, so blood wouldn't flow out like that. Brother Liang, hurry up. You'll have to start all over again if the blood dries up. Xiaofu said. Oh, okay. Pinliang quickly started writing on a piece of paper he'd prepared earlier. He'd just finished writing the word, Yao, when Lin Yi appeared in front of him. Pinliang raised his head subconsciously when he sensed someone in front of him, only to see Lin Yi. Youth, what are you doing? Pinliang jumped. What was Lin Yi doing here? Was he here to cause trouble again? Oh, nothing. I'm just seeing what you're doing. Lin Yi lowered his head and looked at the blood letter Pinliang was writing. Writing a letter of blood. What else can I do? Lin Yi, I didn't do anything to you. You better not cause trouble. Pinliang was a little afraid of Lin Yi. Oh, not bad. I admire your bravery, you're pretty good. Lin Yi patted Pinliang's body twice. I'm just here to see if you really wrote it. You didn't disappoint me. I have high hopes for you. With that, Lin Yi turned around and left before Pinliang could say anything, leaving Pinliang staring at Lin Yi's back, confused. The guy didn't come looking for trouble? He even encouraged him. What was he doing? Ah! Xiaofu shrieked suddenly, giving Pinliang a fright. Pinliang wasn't happy. Xiaofu, what are you screaming for? Liang bro, your hand. Your hand. Xiaofu's eyes were wide open as he pointed at Pinliang's hand. Liang bro, what's wrong? Pinliang lowered his head in confusion, only to be shocked by what he saw as well. His right index finger, which had been cut open, was like a water gun, spurting out blood. It had already dyed the white paper on the table red, and it flowed all over the place. Ah! Pinliang screamed, almost fainting. He didn't notice the blood gushing out of his hand. You could only feel the pain from a wound, but it was hard to tell how much blood you'd lost if you didn't look. There was a famous experiment about a person who was blindfolded, cut his wrist, and locked in a room with the sound of water dripping. When he heard the water dripping, he thought it was the sound of his own blood and was scared to death. This proved that normal people couldn't really tell how much blood they were losing. Pinliang naturally was no exception. When he realized that his fingers were spurting blood like swords, he was completely dumbfounded. This wasn't bleeding at all. It was like the water gun he used to play with when he was young. Pinliang didn't doubt that if he raised his hand, the blood on his fingers would spray far and wide. Am I going to die? Xiaofu, get me to the hospital. Pinliang didn't even have time to write the letter of blood, as his legs were shaking, and he couldn't even stand up. Fu, hurry, call my dad, tell him to come get me. He yelled, panicking. Fu, hurry up and call my dad, tell him to come get me. Everyone in the classroom looked at Pinliang curiously, covering their mouths when they saw the blood gushing out of his finger. How could a finger bleed like this? Yao Yao, look, Pinliang's hand turned into a water gun. Yushu looked at Pinliang curiously. Mingyao was shocked. It's not Lin Yi's doing, is it? I don't know, maybe. Shield Bro's really strong. He can even kill a shark, let alone Pinliang. Yushu said. If Pinliang knew that Yushu was comparing him to a shark, he wouldn't know whether he'd be happy or cry. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.